Okay, Bismillah. Welcome to another session of the Lisān Lab. Um, how can we reinvent it or redescribe it today? I don't always do this, but I like to, and also in light of some of the recent conversations in the group chat, I guess I kind of like to emphasize that Lisān Lab is a space of possibility. It's not a place where we try and fix truth to any one place, right? It's a place of possibility, not absolutism. So we're looking to expand our horizons and expand the possibilities of meeting, not necessarily restrict them and say this has to be this has to be that, um, etc. So today's name is El Latif, which is I think one of my favorite names, if not my favorite name of the names of Allah, the 99 names. Um, we'll get into the meaning. We have already a bit in the chat, but I guess we can start a little bit with the morphology since we usually do that. This root is actually less productive than most roots. As you can see here on the screen, there's only, I think, nine roots in Arabic. There's this one outlier here that you can see, which apparently is the only Proto-Semitic um, uh, cognate. So I'm not sure exactly what that means. I don't know much about Proto-Semitic, attestations and what are the oldest Semitic languages and all that. This one, if you saw really quickly there, sorry, I closed it. This seems to come from the Mehri language, and the simple meaning, the oldest meaning, I guess we can say. Usually, if there is any Proto-Semitic words associated with a root in the database here, that means that it's as old as probably somewhere around 6,000 years. I'm not sure if Mehri is older or younger than that, but it does kind of give us a little bit of a picture of how the meaning kind of started. And the gloss here is just to be pleasant. Lane also has the same kind of meaning in the base verb. Very small entry. It just says it was small or little or slender or thin or fine, elegant, graceful. So a bit removed, actually, I guess, from this Mehri gloss to be pleasant. But I think that there's definitely there's definitely a relationship, which I'm sure we'll get to discuss. I guess I forgot before we jump into anything. Does anybody have any thoughts that they want to share on Al Latif? Anything that comes to mind? Any questions? Any thoughts on the conversation in the chat? Or also Al Adl, because I think I remember last time we mentioned that like we're not going to do justice to Al Adl. Not going to do justice to the justice or the just, however you want to translate it. So if anybody has any thoughts there, I think I think Zanira had some thoughts, but I don't think she can make it today. So in general, our sessions are not like a classroom, so they're more free form. So you can bring any name and any kind of insights from anywhere in any session. So if something from Al Latif or Al Adl or any other name comes into your mind at some point in the future, then as always, feel free to share. Okay, if nobody has any specific thoughts on Latif or Al Adl from last week, we can kind of jump in a little bit to uh, the Quran. I think would be a good jump. So if we look here at oops, We go to the Corpus Quran dictionary and look up lutf. We see that lutf appears in the Quran, I think it was 8 times. See here. Yeah, 8 times. And so the interesting thing that came up in the chat was this thing here. So does anybody have any thoughts on this? Any ideas on this? There was a bit of back and forth, and I think there are some interesting opinions. There's a bit of a difference of opinion, I think, between some of us. Nothing really very serious, but the point of controversy maybe is the idea that this ayah right here, ayah 19 from Surah Al-Kahf, um, contains the middlemost word in the Quran, which is from this root, وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ. And you can see here, that's interesting, that I think this is a Google translation Chrome extension that I have. So the translation here is "Let him be gentle." You can see the translation from Corpus Quran is "Let him be cautious." The whole ayah is in reference to the boys or the men that were in the cave in Surah Al-Kahf, who were slept for 309 years, I believe. And then when they woke up, um, uh, the plan was to go into town uh, and uh, and find some food. So Allah says here, فلينظر أيها أزكى طعاما فليأتكم برزق منه وليتلطف. So the idea is that when he goes to get food from the town, because they were slept for 300 years, he should be cautious, right? That's what فليتلطف means here. And then you can see the rest of the ayah kind of confirms that here, because it says, and let no one be aware of you. ولا يشعرن بكم أحدا. And then, the next ayah talks about, if they do find you, then, they'll hurt you, or they'll, try and change you from your faith.
I think it could also signify like blending in, because it's like, it's like they don't know how much time has passed. Like they think it's only been like a day or so. And so he's like, okay, well, go down. They're kind of expecting everything to be the same. So they're like, well, don't be, be like kind of like just kind of blend in, be low key, I think Zanera said in the chat, but it's kind of in the way of like don't ruffle any feathers and like don't act like, you've kind of set yourself apart from society and everything that's going on there, but just kind of be normal, be as they are, and then try to get some food and come back.
Yeah, I think that's the general meaning. I really like Zanera's translation, "Let him be low key." I think that's really cool. But I guess the controversy or the difference of opinion or the what's at issue, I guess, is with this ayah and that word specifically, is that some people say if you Google middle word in the Quran, this is what comes up, and most of the translations is, um, uh, as we saw in the previous page, to be. Oh wait, now it says no definition found. That's interesting. Uh, to be gentle, right? So if you Google it, you'll get like a bunch of responses, a bunch of links, and they all kind of say the same thing: to be gentle. And the idea I think that people are alluding to is that the center of the Quran, the miracle of the Quran, the middle word in the Quran is to be gentle, right? To kind of like promote this, this idea of symmetry in the Quran, of peace and softness in the Quran, which I think is in part, a response to how Islam is kind of typically characterized as, harsh and backward and legalistic. So yeah.
If I may comment, I remember I'm the one who wrote in the chat that it has to actually do with the context, the
Yeah.
talattuf. So I found it a bit interesting when she said, "Oh, because it's the middle word in the Quran, it emphasized that this might should be our kind of general attitude in life, to be low
Hmm.
key and not to be extravagant in our approach, and just to be more humble. But I feel like I just slept on it, and I thought about it a lot. And I was trying to think about Umar bin Khattab, and he was not yet a not يتلطف at all in his approach
Uh-huh.
and his attitude. And
Hmm.
I thought about like s- other Sahaba and other like other examples, even from Prophet's life. So I thought, Salam. So he was not always having like that attitude. So with the enemies, you can't be always يتلطف with in the شد يعني in the situation that requires you to be sometimes when someone actually say something bad about Islam, you have to be tougher and louder, and if there's oppression you need to be louder. So I just struggled a bit with that idea of we have always to be gentle.
Yes, well, yes, 100%. I agree with you. I think uh, it's it's a broader issue actually, and I write about this kind of thing a lot because it involves what we call in philosophy epistemology, right? And me and one of the brothers, Adib, I think his name, in the group, we talked about this a little bit. I don't know if anybody followed the conversation, but it's about how do we know what we know, right? And he had certain thoughts on that. Um, but yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that to take the meaning of the word out of its context, is very kind of tricky. I don't think that there's really a lot of um, uh, license to do that. I don't see the benefit of that really, and I think that's a little bit of a slippery slope. I think
Mm,
the other point I think is that I think we have to also be careful or be cautious really when we talk about like the structure of the Quran in any kind of way that is like new and wasn't really discussed by the Prophet ﷺ or the Sahaba or even most scholars. Some outliers may discuss the structure of the Quran a little bit. So I mean, we can maybe find those resources and see. But to say that first of all, to say that this is the middlemost word is not something that we can validate, right? And this is something that Adib was saying in one way, but there's a few different reasons for this. His reasoning was because the Quran was revealed on 7 ahruf, which is a long discussion, but that basically just means that there can be some variation in some parts of the Quran without loss of meaning. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the number of words in the Quran is not actually agreed upon. So depending on orthography, depending on maybe even qira'at or the ahruf thing. I don't know how to translate ahruf here because it's not really I guess you could say like the Quran has different faces or edges. Harf is more like an edge, so ahruf here could mean like you can kind of think of the Quran as having like edges. I mean that's a bit weird, but not sure how else to translate that. It's different from the qira'at. That's the main point. We don't want to. I wouldn't translate it as versions. It's not that there's 7 different versions of the Quran. It's kind of like dialects, but still not exactly. And maybe I can find some more information on this from a more authoritative um, source.
sorry, do
Um,
you mean by ahraf letters?
no, no. So yeah, there's a hadith that says in the Quran. I forget the exact wording, but ala sab'ati ahruf. I think it's 7. I think it's 7. So ahruf here, it could mean dialects. I think that's maybe like the closest translation, right? Is like that there are 7 different um I don't want to speak without knowledge. I'll find some like an English translation there's definitely Arabic resources. I forget your name, sister. Is it Johar or Johar? Uh,
Jawahir, yes.
Yeah, I think you've been here before. So I think you're an Arabic speaker. So I
Yeah,
have
I'm
some.
an Arabic speaker.
Yeah, so I think I definitely have some resources in Arabic I can share on it. And then I'll see if I can find something in English too. But yeah, so things like, trying to determine like how exactly how many words are in the Quran are, that will be requisite to determining, what is the exact middle word. And we don't know exactly how many words. And it depends on how you separate words. So sometimes like you have like yeah, ayuha, for example. That's one of the examples I gave in the chat. So some will consider that two words. Yeah, the kind of like yo or hey, the harf al-nida, the particle of calling somebody in Arabic, and then ayuha will be a separate word. But some people, and if you look in your Quran, the Uthmani script, in most cases it combines them, so there's no word boundary there. So that's one of the reasons why there's no exact count of the words of the Quran. Um, and then there's other things, right? I think to me, the takeaway for me is that like whenever we see these kind of symmetries in the Quran or numerical things in the Quran, I think what we have to do is is be cautious. As the word says. Another beautiful example is in Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, that surah, right? That surah has exactly 30 words by most counts, and the 27th word is Layla, right? Night. So a lot of people use that and be like, oh, Laylatul Qadr, the night of power is on the 27th night because of this, like, numerical miracle in the Quran. And while these things are beautiful, and can make us reflect, I think we just have to be careful in saying that, like, in saying anything about it, right? Because we don't know. The same thing as like the disjointed letters like alif lam mim, alif lam ra. We can speculate, but we have to be careful. So that's my main takeaway from it. Um, but it is curious in a lot of ways, right? If you look here at the screen, you can see so the root appears 8 times, and most of the time it's in reference to Allah. Almost actually every single time it's in reference to Allah, except for that one case. So it is curious. Um, yeah. Any other thoughts on that? I think that's all I really have to say. I mean, there's a lot of really beautiful symmetries in the Quran. Um, but yeah, taking the meaning out of context is a little tricky. And I guess the only other thing I want to say here is that, like I mentioned earlier, uh, this is a broader issue in regards to epistemology and how we know what we know. And I'm writing a paper on this, and it's a bit technical, but I want to try and make it accessible, and maybe I can kind of do it in a few seconds here. And I think that what we find often in human behavior and human thought, and this is not exclusive to Muslims, but it's I think it's a universal thing, and I think it gets worse as human beings progress, or it gets more. I don't not necessarily want to say worse, but the divide becomes more intense or greater as time goes on and as humanity develops. And I think that's the divide is between like what I like to consider like rationalists, maybe on the one side, conservatives, maybe you can say, and then more liberal and mystic is the only word I kind of get stuck with. But I mean, just imagine like two poles of kind of thinking and views of epistemology, of how you know what you know. So on the one side, you have the more conservative rationalist kind of thinking, and they're like, they need logic. They always need logic. They always need something that's structured and rigorous, and that's the only way that they can reach truth or agree that we've reached truth. Whereas on the other hand, feeling is the most important. um, and like if someone on that left side or on the other side feels very, very strongly about something, like for example, that this word is absolutely, it has to be the middle of the Quran. I just feel it, right? And it has to mean this idea of like gentleness being the most important thing. um, if that's one kind of mentality, right? Whereas the other would be like, no, we have to be very, very rigorous. It has to be this and that. So I think that as Muslims we need to adopt a middle path, right? Something that integrates both, something that doesn't turn logic and science into a god that we worship, and something that doesn't turn our feelings and our heart and our emotions into a god that we worship. So like I said, a much broader topic, much bigger, much broader topic, and lots to say there, and something that I'm writing on, and kind of technical, but inshallah I can try and make it more accessible.
Yeah, add something.
Yeah, of course.
You gave the example of the feelers when
Yeah.
you said that some might feel that um, that is in the middle of the Quran. And I was just thinking, for the example that you gave and for any other example that could apply, I think that if a feeler, yeah, comes with this information and says this has to be in the middle of it, or any other example for that matter, I think that I feel I think that this kind of information would be doubled, would have another sub layer, because I was listening and I was thinking, okay, that's extremely valid if you feel that the word is right in the middle of the Quran, but why? I feel like there's another kind of information there that could be extracted from it. What is it about its position that that you're so sure of, and that you feel the need to have it right there? What is it about it that gives so much meaning, and has so much meaning to you? And what I'm trying to say is that I don't know if this also applies to the rationalists, but when it comes to feeling, it's also an underlay layer. Yeah, I think that could be used here, of information. Because as far as feeling goes, there's also the unseen and the unsaid, unspoken, better said. And I just think it has double info rather than the rationalists.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think the simple principle is that, like, القرآن لا يجمد, right? So, like, the Quran isn't frozen in time, is how I've heard some scholars say it, right? So its meaning, it really is infinite. And the Quran itself confirms that, right? Like at the end of Surah Al-Kahf, right? Allah says, لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا, right? If the oceans were ink, um, uh, and sorry, it's hard to translate. The meaning basically is that the words of Allah are infinite, right? And that requires a little bit of thought and reflection, because, like, we have the Quran in our hands. We can count at least some kind of idea of the number of words. So the form is very finite, right, to us, but the meaning is infinite, right? And that's what that's what I think is important to take in mind there.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like a personalized letter to each of us from Allah all the way until the end of time. So that, and we're not all meant to be the same person. Like, otherwise we would be. Like, if Allah has made even our fingertips, like our fingerprints, like, unique, and then He's talked about that, like He's meant that as one of His signs. And how can we, and especially when we're talking about the name of Latif, I don't see the role of rigidity here at all. And even like Al-Latif, like, it's like, if we look at the word itself right now, like, there is that thing of, like, that thread of subtlety. It's like something that, it's almost like, I think about it almost like the backside of embroidery. So if you take an embroidered garment and then you look at the inside of it, like, where, like, especially if it's not lined, you see all the threads and everything. And it's like something has, like, its finger on, like, a thread there, a thread that connects all of the threads. And that is of the thief, that's it's.
Well, what was that last thing? You cut off at the that is a latif, and then what did you say? Oh, okay. I guess we lost mom for a second, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're back now. But you caught out. Last thing we heard was that's a latif. Nope, nope, we lost her again. Well, in the meantime, this is the
Hello,
ayah.
can you still hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now. Now we don't hear you.
Yeah,
Hearing
sorry,
you.
my
No worries.
I was gonna move to what Joanna was talking about.
You broke up there. You're gonna move to what?
To what Joanna was talking about. She
Oh,
mentioned like the example of like Umar radiallahu anhu and like
yeah,
the
yeah.
examples of like some of the prophets and everything. But even that like has a like thing of subtlety. Like Musa alayhi salam was known for like his kind of fiery personality, right? Like but he was also like he was gentle. Like he was like who can say I'm going to like set out on this like course of knowledge? Like this is a man who spoke to Allah directly and can do that at any time. But he was told that there was someone out there who had more knowledge than him, and he was like, I want to seek this knowledge. And so he said like in Surah Kahf, like it's quoted like I will not stop until I reach what I'm looking for. And that is not like people look at that as like, oh my god, that's like conviction and determination, and yes it is, but it's also like extreme humility, because it's somebody who's actually like a very genuine seeker, who's actually like who doesn't have like their ego in the driving seat, to kind of seek at that level, and to be so determined to learn, and to kind of put aside what they think they know, and go in search of something that is new, that will open up something uncomfortable for them. Because obviously like Ridwan said, like how can you bear patiently on what you have no knowledge of? And that is like, it's so pertinent, because new information, like, it's not just that we're leveling up, and it's not a seat of power at all. It takes a lot of humility. And so that is subtlety. Like that, like if you don't have subtlety inside of you, you can't do that. Same thing with Umar radiallahu anhu. Like he was known for like his austere personality, but he was also like, he was the one who was like the most, like he's the example when it comes to muhasabah, when it comes to like holding himself accountable. And that's because he was very acquainted with like the way that Allah is, like with these subtle realities and everything, and with himself. Like he was austere because he held himself to such a high standard, because of like what he knew about himself and what he understood about the reality of Allah. Like all of the people, like the people who were promised paradise, the 10 who were given the glad tidings in the world, they were all people who like they were very, very, they didn't take it for granted, because again that there's like subtlety, like there's an awareness of subtlety and an acquaintanceship with it that makes you like that. Like Umar radiallahu anhu, yes, he was very severe, but he was not unkind, he was not cruel. Like he was the man who, like, he wouldn't sleep, he couldn't rest easy in his khilafah, because he knew that he was responsible for each and every single person in his empire. And so he would personally go and see the people's needs. Like he wouldn't even tell them he is. He would like patrol the streets at night, making sure that nobody was going to sleep hungry, or like nobody.
Oh, did we lose her again?
Has
Yeah,
both
I mean,
elements, and you can kind of. Okay.
yeah, you cut out a bit
So,
there.
yeah.
I,
No, but I'm basically done. Like saying, I was just saying, like subtlety has both elements. So you like using one as an example of like, but it's not just about softness. It's about like there's an intelligence to it, and that's based on something deeper. So it's both.
yeah, I immediately when that was mentioned. Well, I guess we should clarify that there's two opinions, it seems like, or maybe three, or probably more, but three main ones, right? So there's those that the three opinions that are concerned with the middle word of the Quran. So one thinks that like, oh, the middle word of the Quran means to be gentle, right? Because that's one of the meanings of the root of lutf, right? To be gentle. Even though that's taken out of context of the meaning in the ayah. The meaning in the ayah would be more like be careful. So that's the other opinion there. And then I guess the third opinion would be that like the middle word, whether it is the most middle word or not, doesn't really have any significance. It doesn't tell us anything. So I think those are the three opinions. So in terms of the first one, or maybe in terms of the first two even, right? One of my first reactions was this ayah here, right? So which says Muhammadun Rasulullah والذين آمنوا أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم, right? So Muhammad is the messenger of Allah and those with him are forceful. I don't like that translation, but like ashidda, right? Shidda means like intensity, right? So they're like, I think the meaning is more like, they're more severe, they're more, they're less forgiving with those who reject faith, and then they're more lenient towards those who are to the believers. Which some people might have a problem with, but I think if you recognize the fact that this is kind of reversed in the modern world, where Muslims are sometimes, or maybe most of the time, tough on each other, and nicer to the greater majority of the world, which is not Muslim. That's a much longer topic, but yeah, in terms of being low key, I think we can expand the meaning a bit, and not just restrict ourselves to subtleness and kindness and that sort of thing, which I have some notes on, but I'm just curious if anybody has any more thoughts here. Zinira just joined us, so I'm sure she has some thoughts. Walaikum assalam.
I was wondering, so you said al-ashya تعرف بضدها, right?
Yeah, that's a common Arab proverb. Al-ashya'u tu'rafu bididdiha. Things are known by their opposites.
I was thinking about, yeah, so I was thinking about like the opposite of latif in my mind, like one of the opposites, right? Specifically in this context would be kathif. And that's just like dense. And like when I think about latif, I think about energy. And like when we do energy work, healing work, everybody has like an energy field. And that is actually kind of, the waliyat al-ataf is kind of like that, right? Like be like energy almost, like it's sensed, but only even by people who have the subtlety to perceive it. And it's not seen, it's not dense.
Yeah,
it's
say
not
that last part again.
solidified.
You cut out a little bit.
I said it's not.
Yeah, you broke up.
It's not seen, but it's sensed.
Okay.
So, can you hear me now? Yeah. So I was just saying that it's like
now.
not solidified. And when people speak about like if quantum physics and like matron, energy and matter being in like constant flow, right? Or like the wave function and all of that, then things start off latif, then they become kathif, solidify, but of course only with intention and all the rest of it. So then it's like, okay, that means there's like a whole.
I'm sorry, Zinira. Is the audio breaking up for anyone else, or is it my internet?
No, I was just gonna say maybe you can do something with the mic because we hear you very like in the back of the room kind of thing.
It sounds like a connection thing, like either internet or Bluetooth.
Yeah, basically it's like, wait. Sorry? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just.
No.
Yeah, that's it.
Is it
now?
It was for a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay, yeah. So
the
basically,
audio quality is clear.
Mara and
there you go.
You guys said that it's your favorite name, so I was gonna say that it's so strange because basically this is like one of the main names in the Shadili Tariqa. There's something called Latifia where we just sit in a it's supposed to be done on Tuesdays, but here we just do it on Fridays because we don't have like a break on Tuesday. But anyway,
It's just reciting a certain dua. We start off with Allah latif بعباده يرزق من يشاء وهو القوي العزيز. Then Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif 1,000 times in a group. And then there's a dua after it. But I've noticed, so this is like one of the names that I would tell people to be careful with repeating. And the reason for that is, even though it sounds like, oh, gentle, beautiful, love, right? It is. But at the same time, it is also the name of the lata'if, the subtle energy points in the body. And I've noticed that when I've had people do it, according to like my friends who are not, who hadn't had, you know, practice with the names before, and they're not in a tariqah, they don't have a sheikh. Not that I have a sheikh, I don't. But when people do that, I've seen them like they almost unintentionally touch their forehead. And I've seen this happen like twice, and with people who don't really know chakras and like, you know, energy points. And the reason for that is because it awakens the third eye chakra. And the third eye chakra is it's an energy point. So basically, even the word latif, right? Like, it's like I said, it's like subtle energy, and it's linked to energy as opposed to matter, in my opinion, the way that I understand it. And so then it's like matter is, you know, visible, it's tangible. And in one way, like they were telling him, don't be like matter, which can be, you know, shar, like you can feel it, be like energy, which cannot be seen. And yeah, so like you're not, you know, noticed basically. And so then it's like when people's third eye awakens, they can sense the subtle worlds where there's stuff going on, which like sometimes you might not want to be seeing because it's scary. So yeah, I've seen that happen with reciting Ya Latif too much. And anyway, so I was just thinking about like in terms of that, it's like if something kathif, like, you know, our kathif existence is like our physical existence, it's our body. And then our latifi existence is our energetic body. And it's our aura. It's our things that we cannot actually yeah, we can't touch them, but we can sense them. And even then, like not everybody can sense those things, you know. So like you actually need to be at a certain level of lutf in order to sense them. And in one way, the entire purpose of suluk is to become more latif, so that you can actually be in contact with the, you know, yeah, the more latifi things. In one way, the entire goal of the Sufi path, the suluk, is to not be dense and immovable, and to not be impenetrable to, like, by God's names, you know, to be flowy. And this is if we go to what's it called, the frames, the one frame that I introduced about like flow versus stability, I guess, or movement versus, you know, stability, or staying, I don't want to say stagnant, but but or like firmness. And then this is a name of flow, like for sure. Latif is a name of flow. It's like, you know, because, you know, like energy, because it's such an opposite, like it's such a stark opposite to anything that is katif, which is like material. It is latif, lutf, like the latifi world is not stopped. Like matter is stagnant, is stable, but energy is always moving, you know? So yeah, that's, I don't know what else you guys discussed, but
Yeah, no, that's great. That goes right into kind of the next set of notes that I had. So I think maybe it helps us step back a bit and kind of, you know, remind each other what we do here. And a lot of times, you know, the idea is to kind of try and find, you know, the simplest meaning, the oldest meaning, the more original meaning, the more fundamental meaning. Lots of different frames that we can use to try and describe what we do. I use the idea of like fundamental frame sometimes because a lot of roots carry similar basic concepts like cutting and joining, or expansion, contraction, and things like that, or like heaviness and lightness, up and down, very basic like human things, right? So in this case, we did mention in the beginning, Lane has here, a very small entry, but it contains like a lot of different things, right? So for something to be small, as you said, or little, or slender, or thin, or fine, or elegant, or graceful, and then all of these things are kind of, obviously related to gentleness, I think, and being careful, right? I think that's not really much of a stretch, I would say. But then we're presented with the question of like, why? How do we go? Like, if we say that, what was this language called again? This is the only Proto-Semitic Mehri, right? If we say that the first word was Mehri, right, and the meaning was simply to be pleasant, right, and then eventually, in Arabic we get.
Sorry, what language was that, Omar?
I don't know much about these Proto-Semitic languages, but it says Mehdi. I think that's what it said. So I don't know
So
much
is that
about it.
supposed to be like it's the original, like it's the proto, like it's the root?
It's the oldest. It's the oldest attestation of this root. It's the oldest evidence that we have of this root is in the Mehri language for some reason. I don't know why no other Proto-Semitic
Okay,
language
Mehri is the
have it.
name of the language, not the
Yeah,
word.
yeah,
Okay,
Mehri is
okay,
the name
cool.
of the language. Yeah. I think with this Mehri language, if the text is, if there's no orthography, if it's just using Latin letters, then that means that they didn't have an alphabet. They only had like a, I forget what the other term is for if you don't have an alphabet. You have like a basically every like a pictor. I forget what they call it, but basically every
Pictographs?
something. Maybe the orthography basically is like phonetic, right? So like you only they don't have a. It's kind of like
Or
hieroglyph.
it could not have an orthography, right?
Yeah. I guess technically it's non-orthography because I think orthography means like phonetic alphabet. But here they like whatever script they had, they just had like some kind of symbols for every single word, which means that they had hundreds and hundreds of words, hundreds and hundreds of symbols. So that's why we don't have it, a font for it. So yeah. So anyway, the question is like, what does kindness and subtleness have to do with each other? What does being low key and or being light, opposite of kathir, not dense, right? Being elegant and slender and gentle. How are all these things related for you guys? Well, one
I feel like
interesting.
one way is just like touch. If like someone touches, if something like a feather is latif and a stone is kathif. If a feather, like if someone touches you with a feather, that's gonna be gentle.
Yeah.
And if someone touches you, I'm not even like, hits you, but like touches with a stone, it's probably not gonna feel great.
Do you guys use
And
latif in Urdu? Sorry to jump.
yeah,
You do.
we do, but actually it's used in a very negative way. So we say late latif, which means like it's just like like negative Nancy, right?
Wait, what do you mean? Say it again. Why? How do you
Like
use
so
it
that translates.
negatively?
Like if someone's late, we call them a late latif.
Late latif. Wait,
Yeah.
how does that make sense? Does it
It's not,
not
it's
have the
just like
same meaning?
saying negative Nancy because it starts with an N. Negative starts with an
Oh,
N, and Nancy starts with an N.
really? Okay,
So
but
it's just,
there's no usage of it that kind of is
no, it
similar.
is. There's latifa. Latifa means joke.
Oh, okay.
And then there's also lutf, like it's meant to mean like kalam, like in speech to have lutf, that means to have like but it doesn't mean softness, it means like to have almost like taste, like beauty, or like the
Okay, so
joy, to have joy.
yeah. So we're getting closer to kind of how I've been thinking about this.
Wait, I'm gonna look up some poetry with lutf because it's like it is like joy, or like the pleasure. It's like pleasure of speech, for example. So we'll say lutf kalam.
Yeah. So I guess one question I kind of have for everybody, and I'm curious about the whole group really, like how is it? So Jawahir, I think you're Egyptian, right? But you're an Arabic speaker, so you're familiar with the fact that we use this word latif colloquially all the time for somebody. I mean, at least in Egyptian, I'm pretty sure it's all Arabic dialects, all modern Arabic dialects, right? That we use it for somebody who's lighthearted and funny, and even kind, or maybe even silly, right? Like in a way, someone who's just not dense and like a bore. So how does that make you feel that we use a word like that both for human beings and for Allah? I think that's I mean, it's not the first time we come across this, right? So like Aziz, for example, we use it colloquially like the way we use Habib, like Habibi Azizi, and that's the name of God. Also Jabbar, right? The bar used colloquially in a negative sense to mean someone who's like harsh or stern or unforgiving. and that's also a name that we use for Allah. But this name is a bit unique, I think. And I just wonder how people feel about that. Like, I have some thoughts, but I just how does that make you feel? As
I
your
mean,
Lord is a Latif.
yeah. Basically, I'm not Egyptian. I'm Emirati, but my mom is Syrian, so I'm mixed. But I speak Arabic. So I was in a course recently, and I learned that all God's 99 names has Jamali and
Yeah.
Jalali uh, connotation.
Mm.
So it was the first time I hear that distinction, and it really like stayed with me because I love to see that this do how those dualities exist in the universe around us, and how we're all like a glimpse of God's soul, and because we have those duality in everything around us and inside us, because those dualities exist within God. So he has the Jamali and the Jalali. He can be both, and that's what makes him complete. That he can strike the balance of those two sides of him. And to be honest, as someone who I would rather feel that يعني I feel comfortable when I feel that God can be latif. So whenever my mom, I remember she taught us, whenever we're so scared, we need to recite God's name, Ya Latif, Latifiyya, and that's because we're trying to get his the lutf is so linked in that way with mercy. So يتلطف. So تلطف actually has so much power in it. It's so hard to be latif. It's not easy to be latif, because especially if you're someone so energetic and so powerful, and to just pull all of that down and regulate all of your energy to become latif, I think it requires more power from someone who have that intense energy and complete sense of energy to be latif rather than be shadid, because it's easy to be shadid and it's so easy to be jabbar, because if you're so intense at the core, you can just let go and then you become that. But if you're all of that, to become latif, it's like so much qadam wa regulation. So that's how I feel around the word latif.
Do you use it colloquially in the same way in Emirati? Do you say somebody is Latif if they're funny or something like that? Is that not as common?
لطيف يعني لطيف is kind. Yeah, we have that connotation, but we don't use it in our dialect, لا الإماراتي ولا in the Syrian one.
Oh,
But
okay.
in Arabic, يعني we understand latif. He's like nice guy or nice girl.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's something that just came to mind when you were speaking, is just like this interesting idea of how like it's easier for us to grip things with like it's easier for us to hold on than it is to let go. That's, I don't know, just kind of like a reflection that I seem to get from what you're saying, which is profound on a lot of levels, I think.
Isn't that like one of the laws of motion?
Is it?
Like things that are moving tend to stay moving,
right.
things that are at rest tend to stay at rest.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
But yeah, no, so basically, I don't know if you remember from last class, not Fusul, sorry, Sufi Path of Knowledge. The names, since all the names have equal power in one sense, the name that has I'm this is my word, I'm using it, jurisdiction over someone at a certain time will have more power than the name that is like trying to manifest through them, right? So like that could also be, do you remember that, Omar? Like that's what Dr. Faris said. But basically, because they're all like kind of the same level.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't really know how I mean, I told you how I I kind of felt about that. I don't really know how to. Maybe it's just my lack of knowledge, or I'm not understanding correctly. But I don't really find a
Yeah,
lot
it's a
of.
difficult thing to like really, I
But
guess.
I think we also need to be careful about like sometimes the way we talk about the names, because like I mentioned to you, like the names will only work in one way, right? I think like they work for us as access points to God, right? Just like language really only works in one way. It allows us to explore reality, right, and describe reality. It doesn't work the other way around, where that like reality can only reality or God can only reach us through those names, because then we're restricting God to like. So like, I mean, I know that's not what you're saying. I don't think that's what you're saying. I don't think that's what Dr. Ferris is saying, but it also just kind of sounds
Let's
like
just say
that's
Faris so white. It's
so
Faris.
Dr. I mean, it's Dr. Faris, yeah. uh I love that root actually. Faris, Firasa is a
Horsies.
what?
I said horsies.
Horses, yeah, but Firasa means like insight, means like or like
Yes,
perspective.
actually, Firasa is also a Latifi thing. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
back in the day. I mean, it's just like an art of reading faces, but like reading energy. They would read a person's personality by reading their face, but they're not actually reading their face, because everybody, if it was about reading faces, then everybody who has eyes can see their face, but not everybody can tell them, what kind of personality they have. But people who had firasa, and I think it's even in the hadith, right? The beware of the firasa of the mu'min
Yeah,
because he sees with the
اتقوا
light of Allah.
الفراسة. Yeah, that
Yeah.
I think that directs us to. I want to get back to this, but I think that kind of hints at the Jalali aspect of this name. But before that, I think I want to just ask, like, how do you guys prefer this name to be translated? If we look at the list, I think this has both of the common translations here. So which is the subtle, but also the gentle. Right, or the most gentle, the subtle one, and the gentle one. And I see obviously why they put both, because both ideas are there. But I think we can be more precise, right? Because I think there's.
Actually, I think what you just said is
Mm,
one of the meanings. The precise one. Like lutf is like also precision,
yes, yes,
being
yes, yes,
exact.
yes.
Like that
That's it.
is really like
Yeah,
I think it's one of the main. So one of the things I think the Jalali thing that we even firasa when it comes to it is the ayah where Allah says that I wrote in my little rant. لا يدركه الأبصار وهو لا تدركه استغفر الله لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار وهو اللطيف الخبير. So it's like reacher, and I translated that reacher or like finder of all the gazes, but unfound by every gaze. So it's like, gazes. You can't, sometimes actually gaze is also a manifestation of latif because, and lutf and like energy. Because you know how if you're just minding your business, but someone's staring at you, you kind of look up and something in you, latif, tells you like that someone's looking at you. And so this name is clearly very closely linked to basar and basir. But it's also linked to being found, right? So like idrak.
yes, yes,
And so it's like that is also scary because like you said, like that's I think the Jalali aspect is like you think because actually we're going to be our gazes are also, part like we're accountable for them. We're responsible for them, right? We read this when we did al-basir, إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد. All of them are mas'ula. So then that means that and I feel like the one that we kind of abuse the most is the gaze, like the one that we're least careful about, right? Like we're fairly like more careful about, I guess, what we speak or what we hear, slightly more, but we're always looking somewhere or at something as long as we're awake, right? So it's like, where's the basar going? If imagine like you had to like give a hisab for every single gaze that you had and wasted on, I don't know, whatever, looking at something that's, not aligned with how Allah wants us to use our basar, that's really scary. Like, how many moments do we have to account for? Like, our entire life, basically, our entire waking life. And so it's like God's gaze will find you no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. And God's gaze will find your gaze. SubhanAllah. It gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, I think that gets right to what I was trying to say, I think, or how I would translate a latif. And I think really, I think everyone said it maybe in different ways, but another thing we should point to is witty. Another translation or definition we can give is like witticism or witty, right? To be witty. What does it mean to be witty, right? That can kind of answer the question I'm trying to get at here. But I think, a latif, I think what it means in like the most precise sense that I can give, right, besides just saying the subtle one or the subtle or the gentle, I think the most precise, more precise way to say it is Allah is the one who is the most attuned to human sense and sensibility. That's kind of how I say it, right? Because that to me captures everything, right? Because if you are very attuned to human sensibility, human sense and sensibility, to the human condition, right, then naturally you become witty. Naturally you become funny. Naturally you become kind and light, and low key in a way, right? Because you're able to, reach the human being. You're able to reach the heart, right? You're able to reach where that hidden part of the human being, or that not so obvious part of the human being. You're able to be aware of it, right? Yeah, that's really how I see Latif, right? Like, um, you know, it's remarkable, really, when you think about it. Like, sometimes, like, you just happen to look up, right? Like you're looking down at something, you're doing something else, and it's just in that one moment that you looked up. I mean, anything could have happened, and you could have not looked up or looked a different direction or whatever it was, but you just happen to look up. You just happen to look up in a certain direction, and you see something beautiful, or you see something amazing, right? That only happens because Allah is aware of your every single moment, right? Like that's really, how I've kind of internalized the name Al Latif over the years, I think. And I wish I could give more examples from my personal life. But I think it's just, I think that should just prompt us to, like, just be aware of, like, how aware Allah is. Like, not even a leaf falls, right, in the darkness of a night that Allah is not aware of, right? So everything that's happening to you right now, right, like, the organization of your room, right, the clouds and the skies, the position of the sun, all of it is with precision and with, the will of Allah. Nothing is random. So that's kind of the main thing that I take away from Lutf and Latif. I think
Can I add something?
of course.
The name Al Latif also makes me think of all the parts, all the subtle ways in which I am blind to life, as in some things click to us a bit later on. I mean, me personally, I'm not very witty on the spot. So it was funny because you mentioned it before. And to me, Al Latif is all the way in which life makes sense, as you said, which made me think of synchronicity a lot by the way you described it. But yeah, kind of like when I think of it, when I recite it, I think of like the missing piece of puzzle from the big picture that I cannot understand and cannot see, but I will. So it's not exactly the unseen. It's not something that it will be forever out of my knowledge. It's just not on the moment, and it usually helps me get there.
Yeah, that's thank you for that. That leads well into the next thing I wanted to talk about. But what that made me just think of, I guess, is like, I mean, we've all been in those situations where, like, you had a conversation with somebody, or maybe somebody bothered you, or maybe you like somebody, or whatever it was, and then, like, after the fact, you're like, oh, I should have said this, right? Or, oh, it would have been funny if I had that comeback, or whatever it is. We've all experienced that. But what is that really? And I think Zanir put it well, right? That it's like you're too dense in that moment, right? You're not present, right? You're too heavy. You're not in the flow. And so that's why you didn't have that lutf in that moment, right? I mean, and we all carry so much, right? And one of the things that I am trying to write about very carefully is mental health. And uh, believe it or not, I think language and poetry and all that stuff can has a lot to say about that. But a big part of it is also the world that we live in today, and the capitalist burnout that we all experience. You have to constantly work, you have to constantly produce something, or you're not valuable. That makes us feel heavy, right? That burdens us, right? And if you're not light, if you're not flowing, then you're not going to be witty, you're not going to be funny, you're not going to be able to be very, very kind either, right? Because kindness requires that attuneness, being attuned to human sensibility and other people's feelings and that sort of thing. And if you're caught up in your own stuff too much, if you're bogged down by the weight of the world, it's impossible to consider somebody else, right? So yeah, that's really, I think there's more we can say too about how lutf is opposite of kathif or denseness, but I need to do some more digging. I think
Wait,
yeah.
can I add something?
Of course.
So,
yeah.
this reminded me when you said witty, it reminded me of me, obviously. But but it reminded me of Sikkim and Sakina, right? Like when we were thinking about, and you said like, what is it about?
Oh yeah. That was very witty of you. That was very, but
Thank you. I know. Allah Mubarak.
well, I
Anyway,
don't know if it's witty. I think sometimes it's just like more than being attuned to human sensibility. I think sometimes we're just attuned to different things. So for some reason you were attuned to, the idea of killing. I never made the connection before, honestly. So like when you said it, I was like, whoa, okay, that's super obvious.
I didn't even make the connection. Wait, so just for context, we were speaking about Sakina and Sukun and how it means to stop, right? To be without movement. And then we realized that Sakin, like the word for knife, is also from the same root. So then Omar was like, what does that have to do with Sakina? And I said, without missing a beat too. I was like, yeah, because if you run a Sakin over anyone's throat, they stop moving. And I was thinking that
Where was the ninja?
Sorry?
What?
Where was the ninja in the group?
Yeah.
No, it's not about being a ninja. It's about it's because I'm the only one that's tuned into the torture that the poor animals go through. You're just blind to it, Omar. That's your problem.
Yeah, you're right.
I see.
Yeah. Anyway, so then so basically I was thinking that the Arabic language is a manifestation of Allah's name Latif, because there are very subtle connections between every single word that has the same root, which does not really exist in other languages except for like other Semitic languages, I guess. So it's like, subhanAllah, that's why we're out here doing all this like digging, right? To see why, like looking up all of these roots and looking up how they connect. Why are we doing that? Because there's a latif connection between all of them. And it's not obvious. It's very low key. And it requires a little bit of something, right? Like it requires a little bit of maybe basar to be able to see it. And it requires obviously God showing it to us, God giving us the basira to see it. But yeah, I thought like, that's so interesting because there's so many, because I remember this one time you were even speaking about like maliha. And I was like, what does salt have to do with like beauty? You found something about it, but it's like everything has something to do with everything. I think that's kind of what goes back to what Mara was saying. Even when you were speaking, Mara, I was like, oh yeah, synchronicity or like signs, they're a manifestation of Allah's name Latif, that everything is like measured and everything is like, reflecting something. We may not know it, we may not have the basar to see it, but it's there. And then when we have it, then we're like, oh my God, subhanallah, Rabbi ma altafak, like you have so much lutf. And yeah.
SubhanAllah. I don't know if you guys will believe this or not, but I don't remember anything about salt and beauty. I don't remember that conversation at all. But here's the crazy part.
No, I had that conversation with a friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've thought about that route before. Maybe we can talk about that later. But what just happened right now was really interesting because before you mentioned that, I was thinking about I don't know if anybody looked at the notes that I put in the group, but the last thing that I have is on veils, in the language of like veils and layers, right? So I'll get into that in a bit. But what I thought I would do is take a quick tangent and talk about like what Zanir was just talking about of like the intricacy and subtlety of the Arabic language and really the power of language. And it's this uh, random piece of poetry that just came to my mind, and one of the words in that, the second word in the line of poetry is maliha. So before you said it, I was thinking it. I was I don't know. I mean,
That's just me and my Latif
yeah,
Basar
maybe.
and Sama. What can I say?
All right,
Alhamdulillah.
yeah, you're in my head
It's
somehow,
just
I guess.
psychic powers.
But anyway, this is a funny kind of story, and I heard it recently, and it's a bit of a tangent, maybe not super related to what we're talking about, but I think I can connect it in a fun kind of way. So the poetry goes, it's a famous piece of poetry that says, قل للمليحة في الخمار الأسود. Say to the beautiful woman, maliha means like beautiful woman, or seductive woman, really. قل للمليحة في الخمار الأسود, the one in the black khimar, the black veil. ماذا فعلت ناسك متعبد? What did you do with the devout worshipper? كان شمر للصلاة ثيابه. He had just rolled up his sleeves for salah, right, to like make wudu. كان شمر للصلاة ثيابه. And then he found you at the door of the masjid. So that's like two lines of poetry that were written. Uh,
You should listen to it in the voice of Sabah
I,
Fakhri.
there are many renditions of it. I'll share some of my favorites. There's this like young Egyptian boy that does it really. There's a lot of renditions. It's a very beautifully sung. It's sung by a lot
Yeah,
of
I'll share mine as well.
yeah, it's
I
sung by a
love
lot
it.
of Sufis too. But here's the crazy part, right? So the actual story behind this poetry has absolutely nothing to do with a woman or a man praying or a khamar or anything like that. There are a couple of versions of the story, but the one that I heard most recently is kind of funny and odd and surprising. I don't know what time period exactly, but I think it was in Medina or somewhere, obviously in the Arab world. And it starts with an alcohol merchant. So he was selling alcohol in the city, and he had all these different bottles, and they all sold except for the bottles that were black. They were all black. You couldn't see inside, so people didn't want to buy it. So this guy, this merchant, he went to one of his friends in the city who was a retired poet. And he was a poet that used to write like ghazal, right? Used to write like love poetry. And he tried to beg this guy, like, write some poetry for me about this situation, right? Maybe it'll help me sell my bottles, the bottles that weren't sold. And the guy refused for a while, and then eventually he gave in, and he wrote those two lines, which are sung often in like Sufi circles. Some not often, but in some Sufi circles. And then after the next day, after the poem, the lines were like broadcast in the community or whatever it was, all the black bottles of alcohol were sold. So that's kind of how that's the story that I heard. But I just find it remarkable because it's like, that was like the alcohol commercials. That was like the marketing of the time, right? Like, if you grow up in the West, or in a non-Muslim country, I'm sure you're used to seeing like alcohol commercials. And as a kid, like they make it look so like appetizing, stuff for love. But they like the foam and it's like gold and glistening, and but that thing is as old as time, right? Like we didn't have art and TV like we do now back then, but just a poem, was able to kind of have the same effect. Yeah, and I think it also says a lot about like, you know, art in general, right? Because like effective art requires lutf, right? It requires that that attunement to human sensibility. Yeah. So if there's no thoughts there, I wanted to jump on the idea of veils real quick, and that's really all I have for today. But I'm sure we can keep the conversation going. Okay, so on the veils thing, this is just a really simple point. I think I brought it up a couple of times before, and it's like kind of a nitpicky thing about language, right? And I think we find it a lot more in like Sufi, and not just Sufi, but any kind of mystic thing. I think even in like Western culture, you find it, and it's this idea of like veils, right? That like, you know, the truth is veiled, right? Or that like, you know, there are hidden truths that are veiled. And I think I've found, you know, I don't know if it's just Dr. Faris that I've heard this from, but the idea that like the self is the veil, the nafs is the veil, that we are the veil between us and, you know, Allah. Like it's only us that blocks us from coming to Allah, which I think is a much better framing, because anyway, the nitpicky thing for me is that like I think veil, you know, is a metaphor that can be a little bit useful, but I think it can be a little bit limiting. In that veil implies to me, at least, a kind of like trickery or a withholding, right? And I don't think that that's how Allah works. I don't think that that's how the universe is, or ourselves are. I don't think that's how reality is designed. I think it's more about lutf, right? And for me, that means that like the universe, reality, ourselves, even the earth itself, right, is layered, right? There are layers, right? And it's not about veils, it's about depth and comprehensiveness. So it's a like a subtle point, I think, but I think it's an important one. And maybe veil came about because, you know, it's more, you know, maybe veil came about first because layers is a little bit, maybe that's a bit more of like a technical kind of or a more modern metaphor, you could say. But I think it's also just also very, what's the word I'm looking for? In a lot of ways, to me, it's truer to reality, right? You don't find veils in nature, right? There's no veils behind like, you know, beautiful waterfalls and sunsets or whatever it is, right? Or in the beauty of the structure.
You. Have you
Well,
never heard? Have you never heard that a beautiful woman is like
that's not
pearl
nature.
hidden in an oyster shell?
Yeah, but
Excuse
that's
you.
not. But that's not.
That is
No.
nature.
But okay, that's a good.
I'm making a joke, by the way. That's not, we shouldn't
Okay, no,
compare human beings to that. But I'm saying that there are things. Are you serious? Every like precious metals and like gemstones and gold, they're literally like buried deep inside the earth. Those are
yeah,
veils. Like you have to
no,
struggle to get to them.
again,
And then on top of that, they're like you have to cleanse them and stuff. But
again,
I
it's
mean, so they are veiled.
yeah, again, it's a nitpicky thing, right? It's a language thing. I get what you're saying, and I agree with you, but I think there's a better word than veils, because veils implies things that I think aren't, you know, fitting of you know, of the creation of Allah. Or because like I said, to me at least, you know, and you don't have to accept this, it implies like trickery or withholding, when I don't think that's the point. I think the point,
But then there's a name, al-qabid, like things are withheld. What's the issue? By this, it's not, Allah is not only basit.
yeah, but the truth is not withheld.
Yes,
You
it is. You think everybody knows the truth
No, that's
about
not
Allah?
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the intention behind the limitation of our access to the truth is not like like a trick. It's not like trickery, right? It's not like, oh, I hid this thing and you got to find it. I don't think that's how God
But
works.
veiling is not trickery. Veiling is like it's like limiting access
Ex-
to for
But no, I don't
yeah,
think
but
it's
it's
even
like
about limiting.
it's a punishment. It is a punishment because It is a punishment because in the Quran Allah says إنهم عن ربهم يومئذ لمحجوبون ثم إنهم لصالوا الجحيم.
Yeah, but that's Day
So
of
it's
Judgment.
like
Hold on,
there's
hold on.
people.
Let me just
Yeah,
finish.
No, what do you
Let me
mean
just
that's
finish.
Day of Judgment? That's right now, Umar. We don't see Allah without a hijab now.
إنهم
He's already veiled.
إنهم يومئذ.
Exactly, because that day some people actually will be unveiled, but right now everybody's veiled from
Right, but
Allah.
I'm
So
talking.
that time, where
Okay,
their punishment is
Zinner, just
literally that they are veiled.
just let me finish, please. Just let me finish. I'm not disagreeing with you, right? It's a nitpicky point about language. I think layers. I think that the concept of layers and the metaphor of layers is more apt than veils, right? Because layers to me implies depth, right? Implies complexity, right? It implies um, effort is required to get access, right? Whereas veils don't imply any of those things to me. I'm not saying that veils is wrong. You can call it whatever you want, right? Like I don't think there's anything in the Quran that says, oh, there are, veils in the universe that you have to uncover, right? But I think there's plenty of evidence in the Quran, and you mentioned it yourself, that there's depth and intricacy and nuance that's hidden even I use the word hidden, but not hidden, right? It's not hidden in layers. It's designed in layers, right? Like for example, like this app that I've built, right? It has many, many, many layers to it, right? And that is by design, right? In order to have all these different features, in order to have all these different little, tiny little things in it, right? It has to have these layers, but they're not. I wouldn't call them veils, right? There was no like, obviously I'm not God and I'm not creating something, out of nothing. But it, the process, I think, of creating something that's intricate and complex and with depth, and with greater impact as you go deeper. I think the process of doing that is necessarily a layered process, right? And the example you give of pearls is a good example, I think. You can think of that as a veil if you want, right? Like, and you can use that language, but for me, I prefer to think of it as layers, right? Like, think about it, right? That pearl is not just within an oyster, right? It's at the depth of the bottom of the ocean, right? Or wherever, or whatever body of water, right? And so like, the earth is a layer, the ocean is a layer, the depth of the ocean is layers upon layers, right? Like there's even like scientific terms for like, the different parts of the sky and the different parts of the earth. And then the pearl is hidden inside, the shell, and then even within the shell there's probably more layers, right? There's probably like a membrane over the shell or something like that. If you've ever seen videos of people on YouTube like selling pearls and stuff, I don't know why I watch that stuff, but you can watch it for like hours. It's really kind of beautiful, right? They take these pearls out and they sell them usually, but they're showing the person that buys the beauty of the of what they're buying, right? And they take this like ugly looking, crustacean shell thing, whatever, and they split it open. You find this amazing beauty thing hidden deep. Again, I keep saying hidden, but I don't mean hidden in the sense of like someone's hiding from something from you, right? And that's what I want to move away from. So yeah, it's a nitpicky point of language, and it's a subtle point, I think, but I'm not trying to ruffle feathers here. It's just, it's sorry, I think it was that Mara or somebody.
Yeah, I was asking, do you mean protected?
No, I don't even think protected, right? Because like God doesn't need to protect. I think it's about like, it's a question that gets asked often a lot with like non-Muslims or kids, right? That like, well, why didn't God just put us in heaven? Why make us go through all these things, right? Like your life, your ages, the years of your life, the days of your life, those are like layers, right? Those are the layers of your identity. Those are the layers of who you are. And so I don't think it's about like hiding or protecting or any like human thing, right? Because like it's those are like human qualities that I feel like we're ascribing, and not just human qualities, but like you know I, I think I've said this to you before, Mara, but like I think there's often this like anthropomorphization of the universe, right? Like the universe is telling me something, right? um uh, you know and then
No, that's not anthropomorphization. it's personification. It's like it's an entity. It's like the
Right. Yeah.
cosmos is like, but everything can be an entity. It doesn't mean it's a human being. Like we're not projecting human qualities, we're just projecting like consciousness onto it. But I mean, we're not projecting, it is conscious.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're correct. That's I misspoke. Anthropomorphization isn't really accurate, but the reason that I thought of that was because like I think sometimes people really think that God is behind a veil, right? Like a woman, like he needs to be protected or he needs to be, and that's not the case, right? The case is that we are too coarse and dumb and dense to perceive the fineness and the beauty and the majesty and the expansiveness of God. It's not like it's not, you know, I don't think it's the will of God to hide things from us, right? I think it's the will of God to give us incentive to dig deeper, right? It's the will of God to give us the incentive to push, right? And I think it's a really, really subtle difference. So I can completely understand if you don't understand what I'm talking about, or if you don't really like what I'm saying, or if it sounds weird. But I think it's I felt at least that it was important to kind of bring up, and I'm sure I can do a better job of explaining what I'm saying. But yeah.
I understood very well from what you said. I mean, you did a great job.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I don't agree with it. Hold on, I'm just gathering.
No, she's
I'm
just
just
she's just being the entire
no,
hero.
no,
But I'm
no.
sure
I get it, but I think we just you can pick whatever language you want. It's preference, right? Like this isn't like we're debating the meaning in a Quran or something like that. I'm just saying that I think we need to be careful with how we how certain we are sometimes about reality and the intention behind it, or why God made certain things. Like sometimes, let's ground this in a really simple kind of way. You can imagine a lot of people, beat themselves up often, and they're like, why am I like this? Why do I keep doing this? And I think it's easy to beat yourself up and think that you are just like you're blocked in some way, right? That you're just like something is blocking you from reaching your
people are blocked though.
yeah, people are blocked. I do agree with that, but I don't
هم
think
بكم
that
عميا فهم لا يرجعون في
but
في
the block
آذانهم
but
وقرا.
but the point for me is that the blocks are there on of your own accord, right? Like God didn't put those blocks in you, right? God didn't put any barriers between him and you, right? فإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard the explanation of this ayah, but it's in Surah Al-Baqarah. And there's a very beautiful kind of commentary on it, whereas like in the Quran, often Allah paraphrases human beings and the Muslims around the Prophet ﷺ, right? يَسْأَلُونَكَ and in many times Allah says like they ask you about this, they ask you about this, they ask you about that, and then Allah continues and responds by saying قُل, say this, say this, say this, say this to them. But in one case in Surah Al-Baqarah, that doesn't happen, right? Allah doesn't say. Allah paraphrases, the questions of the believers, and then instead of telling the Prophet to answer them, Allah answers right away. I'm trying to remember the ayah. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. And if my servants ask you of me, then I am near. It doesn't use the Prophet ﷺ as an intermediary in this one case, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I've found all the things that I wanted to find. So number one, Bismillah, Allah does place hijab. Okay, so human beings are blocked, first of all.
I'm not saying that they're not
Wait,
blocked.
will you listen?
But
Please listen to the
I
references.
will listen, but you can't say that I said something that I didn't say. I didn't say that human beings are not blocked.
You said that sometimes people say we're blocked, but nobody's blocked. I mean, okay, anyway.
Allah is not
that-
blocking you. Allah is not the
Okay,
one that's blocking
okay,
you. That's what I'm
okay.
saying.
Everybody heard Omar said Allah is not blocking them. Okay. وإذا قرأت القرآن جعلنا بينك وبين الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة حجابا مستورا. وجعلنا على قلوبهم أكنة أن يفقهوه وفي آذانهم وقرا. What are these? These are veils. Hijab is obviously a veil, right? So when you read the Quran, we place, جعلنا, you said Allah does not block them. We place between you and those who do not have faith in the hereafter a hijab, a veil, mastura, that covers them. وَجَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً, and like في أذانهم وقرا. Waqar is also another type of veil. Then وَمَا كَانَ لِبَشَرٍ أَن يُكَلِّمَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا وَحْيًا أو مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ. And it is not for any human being to speak to Allah except through wahi or from behind a hijab. So Allah is veiled himself. You said Allah does not hide. فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين جزاء بما كانوا يعملون. And no nafs knows what has been hidden for them of the coolness to their eyes as a reward for what they used to do. And these are, yeah, that's it. I'm just going to leave it at that because, there's other veils. But I was going to say that hijab, so we know that Allah is the doer of the veiling, and we know that Allah is the doer of the hiding. And then there are things that are hidden. For example, jinn or jannah, the root of it is hidden. And yeah, it's like hidden or something that's, what's the other word that starts with a C that also means hidden? It's a synonym. I forgot, but anyway.
Conceal?
Yeah, concealed. So it's like, I guess concealed implies more of like a doership, right? Like that someone did it. So like someone did it on purpose. So Jannah is like concealed from us. It's behind a hijab, we can't see it. And then that's part of the test. God hid it because if you can see a Jannah and a Jahannam in front of you, who's gonna do bad deeds or like avoid doing good deeds because it's in front of your face, but it's not in front of your face because it's Jannah, because it's hidden. And then jinn are beings that are hidden from sight. God hid them because, I don't know, I guess we would probably go insane if we saw that. And then there's other things that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, like he could hear. And he said, if you could hear things that I can hear, like, again, that's like a manifestation of his lutf, that he has latifi, hearing and seeing and sight and vision and all of those things. And he doesn't have veils on his heart and his eyes and his, not eyes, but on his basar and his sama, because he's able to see those things. That means other human beings have those veils. In fact, two beings, الثقلين, the human beings and jinn, have veils of for example, what's going on in the qubur. This has been veiled from us. Like it's happening. Like apparently people not apparently, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that people in the qubur, in the graves, they're being tortured. They're having adhab, and everybody can hear them except with the fact that everybody can hear them means that some people are veiled, like human beings and jinn are veiled, but other beings like animals are not veiled. So who veiled it? Who veiled these realities from us? That means realities are veiled. And then, but when we speak about Allah specifically, and hijab is it's not khimar, right? Like linguistically, hijab is like a curtain. Actually, it's not like a veil. So hijab, technically hijab. So Allah says, don't speak to the ummahat al-mu'minin illa min wara'i hijab, except from behind a hijab. That means they have to be in behind, even when they rode on like a camel, it's not like they're just wearing an abaya and a khimar on their head, but they're in a whole palanquin, I guess. They're in a whole thing, which covers even their body. The body is covered by the cloth, but even, it's like a little room or a little carriage. So that is hijab, right? And it's from behind a curtain. And so that is specifically for the ummahat al-mu'minin, lastunna ka'ahadin min an-nisa, because you are not like any of the other women. And everybody's forbidden from marrying them. And I think that hijab and Allah's hijab they are limiting access to intimacy. It's not everybody can reach this. And access to being intimate with this really sacred being is highly, highly restricted. And in the case of them, once Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married them, nobody can access intimacy with them. After that, that's it. It's closed. And then in the case of Allah as well, you need to go through a lot in order to access intimacy, and not being able to access their intimacy, his intimacy, Allah's intimacy, is a punishment, because Allah says, إِنَّهُمْ عَنْ رَبِّهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَمَحْجُوبُونَ. Right now, everybody is mahjub from Allah in different degrees. And there's also a hadith about there's I think 70,000 veils of light, and if one veil would be removed, then I think it would burn us up or something like that. Astaghfirullah, I should probably look it up. But it's there are veils, and Allah has veiled himself. And Musa alayhi salam, when he asked, Rabbi arini anzur ilayk, he asked for the opening of a veil, but he also asked kind of, because what he actually asked was not like, show yourself to me, but he said, arini, give me vision to be able to see you. And so he was asking for the lifting of the veil from our eyes. But that's not something that fully happens in this life. It only happens after death, inshallah, right? Like, so it's like, even after that death, إِنَّهُمْ عَنْ رَبِّهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَمَحْجُوبُونَ. So like on that day, that means on that day, there is potential for not being mahjub. And yet those people, they're so unlucky, may we not be of them, that they will still be mahjub. So here, by default, everybody's mahjub, everybody's veiled from Allah. Again, there's different degrees. Like Musa alayhi salam is much less veiled in this realm than we're veiled. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was much less veiled than we're veiled. But still, right? Like there's only a full unveiling. And like in one of the other ayahs, Allah says, وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيد لَهُمْ مَا يَشَاءُونَ فِيهَا وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيد. So like they will have whatever they wish in Jannah, and we have more. And the scholar said that mazid means the vision of Allah, like the seeing, being able to see Allah. And so that vision implies, like, being able to see someone who is behind a veil implies that the veil is removed. And so that means that that happens in the next realm. And so that means that it's a gift. It's like whatever you desire and this, but it's like it's a prize, it's a reward, it's a, what's it called? Even with like celebrities and stuff, like they charge, I don't know, ridiculous amounts for people to like do a meet and greet VIP with them, right? So in one way, they veil themselves from like direct vision. And most people only see them through like their phones or something, right? So
I think
yeah.
they call it as we used to manage like a sponsorship portfolio, so we used to call it appearance. So they charge per appearance.
SubhanAllah, yeah. So I guess the default for them is like, it's like, so the hijab of Allah is like, it's a restriction of access to intimacy. And even khimar, again, the khimar of Muslim women is a restriction to access to intimacy. Like you have to be their, my brother or my blood relative or my husband in order to be able to see, to have the appearance. We charge, the appearance is just, it's like very limited. Not everybody is going to get the appearance. And so it's like, in one way, that is also one of the ways in which Allah's, like Ibn Arabi says, the most perfect locus of manifestation for Allah is a woman. And women are veiled, like Allah is veiled we're supposed to be veiled. But yeah, that's all, Omar, because you said I was saying something that you didn't say, but I made sure everybody heard that you said Allah does not veil it. And then I hope you heard the ayat where Allah says he does veil. Anyway, your floor is yours. No, please go ahead.
I really love your passion and enthusiasm and mashallah, I have nothing negative to say. I knew you would object, and I knew you would have your usual taste for or inclination for precision and technicality, which well, as I say, I love and really appreciate. But I think you're not hearing me at all, and you're not understanding what I'm saying, which I'm not blaming you for, because it could just be it is, I can definitely say what I'm saying better. I don't think any of the ayahs that you mentioned really negate anything that I'm saying. I think you missed the earlier discussion that I started with about kind of what we were talking about in the chat with Adib for a couple of days about epistemology and how we know what we know and what gives us certainty, and how that often ends up in most groups diverging into two camps, right? Like the people who are rely very much on like reason and rationality, and then the people who rely very much on like feeling and gut instinct and that kind of thing. So I partly answer some of your questions there, or some of the points that you bring up there. And like, I guess I just have to emphasize it in a general way. So, this might be boring, I guess, for some because it's repetition, but like perception is limited, right? Language is only a pointing. Language is never going to capture absolute reality in any way. Even the names of Allah don't capture the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say hijab, when we say veil, when we say layers, when we say asrar or secrets or things like that, these are all different words that point to something. They don't capture it entirely. They don't tell us exactly. There's no literal hijab, right, in the sky somewhere, right? We know that, right? We're using the word to point to a reality that we cannot fathom. So I think if you hold that principle first, then it's easier to understand what I'm trying to say. And all I'm trying to say is that veil to me has a negative connotation, right?
Who said, again, this is going back to like what is metaphorical and what is real? Who said there's no literal hijab? If Allah said there's a hijab, then there's a real hijab.
I
And
mean, there's no
you're
hijab.
asserting that
I mean, there's
you're
no
asserting that it's
literal
a
hijab.
metaphorical hijab.
Again, there's no need to get into like semantics, right? Like what I'm saying is
But Omar, we can't see Allah. Isn't that a hijab? That's a real hijab. We can't see him.
again, you're using a word to point to a reality. It cannot completely capture the reality. Like words are not absolute, right? Language is not absolute. Language can never point to an absolute reality, right? Whatever the hijab is, right? Whatever thing is between us and Allah, right? You can describe it in a lot of different ways, right? And I don't see why we have to stick to one kind of language. And all I'm saying about that language is that it has implications that I don't think are appropriate. All of the examples that you showed are Allah hiding, if you want, or putting things behind hijab, or layering them, whatever one language you're more comfortable with. All of that is out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what I'm saying, right? I'm saying that that's fine, but to try and to use language that implies that Allah is like a trickster, right? Or that Allah is like, um, hiding things from people, for not out of his mercy, right? That I don't think is appropriate, right? I think God builds things in layers for us to make an effort, right? Whether it's like, the like medical science and the depth and the beauty of the human body and creation, right? Or nature, right? It's like, the more you expose yourself to nature, you go deeper into the woods, you go high up or mountain, the more layers and nuance of the life that you see, of the world that you see, of the creation of Allah that you see, the more intimate understanding you have of Allah and his creation, right? But to frame it in a way that like, uh you know it's like, not for you, and like not for your own good. That's what I think is kind of, and I think that the language is nepotistic sometimes too, right? Because it's like, oh, only these saints have access to this kind of thing. Only these people are can remove the veil, and other people can't. And maybe that's true, but I don't think that's language that's helpful for anybody. Right? I don't think that's language that's useful for new Muslims, for the average Muslim, for non-Muslims. I think it's language that divides more than unites. And this is just a personal preference. I'm not saying that I'm not disagreeing with you at any point of aqidah or any point of principle. It's a point of language that I'm being particular about. And it's just my preference. I don't think anybody has to take my word for it or adopt my preference. It's
So you admit you were wrong because before you said Allah did not place the veil, but Allah said He placed the veil.
I will
that's
admit
resolved,
that
right?
I will admit
Okay,
that
good.
I'll admit that I misspoke, right? And I can better articulate by saying that Allah does not place veils with ill will. That any veil or any layer or anything not obvious to us
I mean, yeah, but like who's
is
saying
out
that?
of the
I don't think
mercy of
anyone said
Allah.
that.
Yeah, but
I don't think anyone said that.
I'm not saying anybody said that. I'm saying that the language of veils, right, of things being hidden from us,
But
right?
that is the language
seems-
that Allah used hijab and ukhfiya. Ukhfiya means like it's a passive verb, right? Like it
Yeah,
has
but
been hidden.
not when it comes to Allah, right? Like وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, right? When
He
if
can be
they ask
qareeb
you,
and still we can't see him. Like it's not
right?
a
No one's saying
contradiction.
I'm not disagreeing with that, Zanir. I don't know why you keep pressing this point, right? The idea is that there is nothing that can there's no barrier between you and God. Yeah, you can't perceive God in all his majesty and all his fullness, sure, but there's nothing that is blocking you from coming towards God other than your own self and your own lack of faith and your own lack of will. That's it. Allah is not
Okay, sure.
yeah, that's all I'm saying, right? Is that like, yeah, I don't know. I think that could definitely be clarified and and put better. I don't mean to ruffle feathers. It's just it's just a point of language I think is worth bringing up. Yeah.
I think like whether there is a veil or there is no veil, at the end of the day, there is another essence when God says in the Hadith Qudsi like إذا أتاني عبدي
Not
ماشيا أتيت له
exactly.
مهرولا.
Exactly.
وإذا أتاني مهرولا I can't remember the words, but the
Yes.
meaning is
Yes.
يعني, if
Absolutely.
anyone walk towards God, God will get you closer. Now
Yes.
there is veil, there is no veil. Obviously there is a veil because
Obviously.
يعني there is a veil. We can't see him. The fact that we can't see him is the biggest veil. But this entire point is to test our iman. Like all of the just the idea that we need to believe in something that we don't see is the essence of the idea of veil, and the essence of the idea of iman, believing in something you don't see.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. That's all I'm trying to say is that like that hadith captures very, very well the attitude of Allah towards his believer, right? If you come to me with one step, I come towards you running. If you come towards me running, I come towards you, whatever, 10 times that. So that attitude is very different to me from like, oh, the truth is veiled or the, hidden meanings and stuff like that. I just think it doesn't, it's not alluring. It doesn't invite you to come and explore and look. I don't think so. I also really love the hadith that says uh, ana inda dhann abdi bi, right? So I am as my slave imagines me to be. His assumption of me is how I am to him, right? So like those to me are, like very clearly Allah is saying there's nothing that can, keep you from me, right? Except you, right? And I think that language is the kind of language that we should encourage and say more often. But just maybe I can put it in the simplest sentence, right? I'm not denying in any way that we don't have access to certain things. I'm just trying to emphasize how we frame that. How do we frame the fact that we don't have access to it? Is it because we're not good enough, that we're not special enough, that God, favors some people in a way that's, uh, not fair, right? Like I think some people think that, right? Like think like, why does God do this to me, right? Or why does God give all these people all these riches and all these things, but He veils them from me, right? I think people do think this way, and I think that happens also because of, or at least in part because of the language and the framing that we use. So that's
There's
all I want to say.
also there's also another point I would like to. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I was finished.
Um, um, a third thing. I don't know. It feels like a third. I can maybe yeah, what you said, because there are like two perspectives, and the third one would be over the discussion. So I see Zinira's perspective as a line, and I see the other two, your and Jaho's perspective as, yeah, there's a line, but there's also a warp.
A what?
A warped line. I don't know.
A warp.
Or I'm just trying to make it graphic so I can, because that's how I process this kind of.
Well, what do you even mean by line? You mean hijab? You mean like some inaccessibility? That's what you mean by
No,
line?
I'm not really getting into the depth of it, because I'm honestly here just to learn. I mean, I'm not exactly, I'm so new. I'm not in the process of getting into discussion per se, but I was analyzing what you said, what all of you said, and I was just thinking, because about over the debate, and I was just thinking, if you don't reach a common ground, does it feel, and you each have your own idea and your own image of it, does it feel alone not to share the way you see Allah and how you see this, how your perspective looks like? Because I think it's interesting to, I don't know, we don't have to get into it, but it's just something that, for example, I relate to a lot, because I feel like it's all about, I see it this way, I see it this way. Yeah, but there's also like this way. Yeah, it's true, but it can also be like this. And I was just thinking, does it feel alone if you, at the end of the day, you don't see it the same way? Because what I know for sure is that Allah reveals to us depending on, I think I also told you this like a couple of days ago, I feel like we experience it differently according to our own molding and personality. And I was just thinking, can, is it more lonesome if at the end of the day we cannot see it in the same way? Does it say something about how we perceive it, how we perceive him, what we know about him?
I don't think it's lonely for me. I think it's more about like to be honest to me, like differences of opinion usually often are illuminating, right? It's like because everybody is layered and nuanced in that way, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has different perspectives, and I think that's you know there's a lot of gray in Islam, and I think that's a mercy from God. I think the only thing that becomes sad sometimes is that if we become attached to language, to certain kinds of languages, or certain kinds of framings, sometimes I think that becomes like it's because of a cultural thing, or it's because of a societal thing, or it's because of like a predominant kind of thing, and that's when I guess it can be frustrating, because like and we see this all the time in media and politics, right? Like Western or non-Muslims or whoever it is insists on framing things in a certain way that, like, although it technically it's true, right? Like Palestine was killed, blah, 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 or died, Palestinian died under rubble or whatever it is. They're not being explicit about what actually happened, but it's true. But they favor that kind of framing. Why? Because it directs your attention in a certain way, right? And that's kind of like the point that I keep trying to kind of reiterate and reinvent every single time that we have these sessions, is that perception is limited, right? And language only directs our attention, right? And forms our attitude. So
No, I completely understand, but do you know why I somehow asked this question and I made this invitation? And by all means, feel free anytime to say it's outside our area of interest. But I grew up Christian, and all my friends are Christian, and we're still talking about God, and I realized that the discussion is like this. It's the same God, and the Christian rhetoric We're all very familiar with it. And then I come into the discussion and I say, what you say is true. I mean, with the obvious correction of my personal choice and my perspective. But Islam is, I mean, yeah, Christianity is, it was, it is mentioned, it is by itself, but my religion comes as a warp, like I mentioned before, comes as a correction. And I realize of what was misinterpreted before in Christianity. And so I realized that to me, this is the truth, but to them is in the end denying their faith. I that's what I'm saying. It's a non-ending discussion. At the end of the day, one of my best childhood friends, he's a Catholic priest. So, and I sat with him one time and I think we talked about it for like 7 hours and I filled him in with all the details. And at the end of the day, we just concluded that we're looking at, he put it so nicely and I have the utmost love and respect for him. He said, I guess at the end of the day, we just agreed to look at the same window on a boat, but from a different perspective. And I realized that no matter how much I say, yeah, you're right, but there's also this. And no matter how much they say, yeah, you're right, but we will never, and even if sometimes open-mindedness, as in no one denies that Allah is not unveiled, but even if overall it invites for a broader perspective for the person who came up with this perspective, it is nullifying. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing you can do about it, no matter how hard you try.
What do you mean nullifying? Like negating? Different
Yeah,
perspectives that are.
because someone's perspective, I cannot support. I cannot not support. Support is not a good word. I cannot agree to my friend's perspective anymore without adding something. And if I add something without adding it, I don't agree. But if I add it, I change it. So no matter what I do, I don't agree, and what I'm trying, no matter how you look at it, is just, that's what that's what I was saying. Sometimes you just have to be like, yeah, we're looking at it from different perspectives, and that's fine. There's no way to honor both perspectives and also find the middle ground. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I was thinking, is it a bit heartbreaking? Is it a bit hard to comprehend? Why would it feel? Why I asked what I asked in the beginning. Is it lonesome, to finish this session or just to finish any discussion and to think, I do not share with other person my view of God? In the end, sometimes, this doesn't say anything other than the fact that it's such an intimate relationship just between you and God, and a intimate perspective. And yeah, it's subtle, but yeah, that's what
Wow.
that's what I was thinking from your
Mara, are you sad? Are you sad that we're debating?
No, I'm not. I'm just
Yeah,
It's okay.
I
It's not lonesome for me. Like, I don't mind.
I
Like, it's
bet.
cool. I like having different perspectives. I'm chilling. Like, I'm really chill. Alhamdulillah. Anyway, so what you said about the intimate relationship with Allah reminded me of like what Dr. Faris spoke about. Like, it's called Wajhul Khas. every single human being has like a wajhul khas with Allah, like, a way in which God manifests specifically to that specific person.
Yeah.
So and that's actually a special thing, right? Khas actually means special, but it also means private, and it can mean of many things. It also means confidential. So it's like something that one way that only I know Allah versus one way that only you know Allah versus one way that only Omar knows Allah, right? So it's like it's special and it's confidential and it's private. Like, yeah, kind of like when people are behind a hijab. Secret also.
No, not to nullify. I mean, debating is, I think it's very meaningful and it's beautiful. And obviously, none of it would happen if we would just agree with everything. I'm just thinking at the end of the day, if you think about it, all monotheistic religions agree there's a God, and there's an ongoing debate, an ongoing, and it will never. It will never settle, and it's
Yeah, me and Zanira disagree all the time. It's beautiful. I have no ill feelings. No, it's and everybody kind of does it. We
Wait, sorry, can I
complicate.
say something? When you just said that, it just reminded me of like my friend who is like studies psychology, but he wrote an article about what it took for people that were like following, they were like, we're just following orders under the Nazi government. Is that they all had, I mean, people who didn't do that, like for people to actually step away from, things that everybody is doing, it's a trait in psychology. It's called disagreeability. And it's just the willingness to say no and to be okay with it. To be like,
Yeah.
actually, no, I don't agree with that. And that is actually something that has helped people. That is like, he was basically arguing that that's like the common factor for when people are in a situation where the masses are committing, something like genocide, for example, in his example. And it's like horrible. But then a lot of people love to just fit in. And it's like a huge, like, in one way, it's a core need, even some might say, quote unquote, evolutionarily, because if you are left out of the pack, then you might be like killed, right? So then the ability to be able to say no and to stand out from the crowd is something that actually helps us be more moral beings and make more moral decisions, as opposed to just being like, oh, I'm just gonna be okay with this just to fit in.
Yeah, I mean, so many thoughts there from what Mara was saying. And it's a little surprising to hear you say it that way, Mara, because you're the only person I think here familiar with Wittgenstein. And I think Wittgenstein's main project, his main focus is like you said, that I'm kind of like a modern day or something like that, and it's a point that I always try to emphasize, right? That our perception is limited, that language cannot capture everything, right? Ever. It's constant iteration, it's constant reevaluation and renewing our intentions and realigning ourselves and reorienting ourselves and reminding ourselves of the attitude that we need to have. That's what language does for us. That's the process of using language. So yeah, so no, it doesn't make me sad. It only makes me sad if I feel sometimes that the other person is not really trying to complicate what I'm saying, right? Or have me think in a different way, and is just insisting on one, kind of saying the same thing over and over again. I think in a good debate, what you find often is that each person tries to say the same thing a slightly different way, right? Because it gives you like another angle. And that's what language does, right? That's what I keep trying to say, is that like regardless of how we're using it, all we're doing is pointing. Another way I kind of try and think about it is like, imagine like we're just beings of light, right? Like, and how bright you shine is how close you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So like the Prophet ﷺ is the brightest, let's say, of all creation. And then all of us have variances, right? And then all of us even have variances even within ourselves, within our days, right? Some days we're brighter, some days we're dimmer. So, the language that we use and the actions that we do, right, which are often prompted by and driven by our language, that's what makes us brighter. So, you know, like when Zanira, said if you slit someone's throat, they stop, right? When she said that, like, maybe she just had like a solar flare or something like that. She just burst with light, in some kind of way. That's literally how I kind of visualize it, right? And communication, interaction, is this constant like fluctuation of light and energy and that's how I see debate and communication and relationships in general, right? And this is something that I've thought about a lot, recently, since I've gotten married and trying to manage a relationship and marriage and the interaction between men and women. And the conclusion that I've kind of come to is that any relationship is easy. All relationships are easy. There's really, just like with with Allah, right? Like there's nothing that's stopping us from coming closer together except ourselves, right? So the what is hard is self-development, right? What is hard is managing yourself, is growing as an individual. And that's, I think, the key to any beautiful relationship, is that neither party remains stagnant, right? That you're constantly developing yourself, you're constantly iterating on yourself, and you're constantly growing. Because then the other person doesn't seem like they're stagnant. They don't, like, we're not static, right? There's always this attitude of like, I can be better, I can have a better understanding, I can better articulate myself today than I did yesterday. So that's kind of how I think about it. And another way you can kind of maybe put this, right? I think you were touching on like Christianity and like views of God and stuff like that. Like in language, for example, a lot of grammarians say, especially Arab grammarians, there are no synonyms. Every single word is like unique in a little bit of way. Even if they're close, there's still like a little bit of variation. And that's how humans are too.
It's
That's how
like
humans.
look as well, right? Like
Yeah,
there's a
but
look, there's
yeah,
synonyms.
but even within the creation of a human being, right? So like, there are no two conceptions of God that are the same, right? Well, like we'll never think of God the same. None of us. There's no way. We might come close, we might shine, really bright, but they're always going to be a little bit of nuance, right? Like no two suns are the same, right? No two stars are the same. Even if they shine just as bright, right? They're still gonna shine a little bit differently, right? That's kind of how I see it. And I think that brings us to this other point about like faith and like other conceptions of God and other faiths and stuff like that, in that can we can't speak about somebody's heart, right? We can't judge. We can judge actions, right? We can say this person is saying something that's wrong, this person is doing something that's wrong, but we don't know that this person is, that we don't know their relationship. We can't judge. We can't condemn people to hell, right? And say, oh, this person is kafir. We can say these actions are kafir. These actions are rejection of God, but we can't claim to know what is in someone's heart. And this is a mistake that I think we all make, very often, right? Because especially when dealing with other people. But I think it can also happen with Allah, right? I think we can also, sometimes it's difficult to give Allah the benefit of the doubt, right? Just like it's difficult to give a human being the benefit of that. You're so sure that this person just meant to piss you off, or just meant to like do this, or just does not care about you, or whatever the case may be. But you don't know that, you have, no matter how certain you are, it's not absolute knowledge.
You find out later. I'm joking.
Oh yeah, we'll all find out later at
That
that.
can happen a lot.
Yeah, at the in the day of judgment, we'll all find out. Yeah.
Do you have a set of questions you want to ask Allah in the day of judgment? I do. I know it's super silly, but I'm sharing. This is super personal. I have an actual list of questions I want to specifically ask him after I'm being judged and everything, and we talk about what I did. And I have, like, for example, what happened in 2023? Why did the genocide last this long? Why did that boy in the 6th grade told me that I'm ugly and this and this and that. There's a whole list that I want to debate with him in terms of like even trends and politics, and just ask him how, how did you feel when that happened? How could you not just like erupt from everywhere and just say stop it? No, low genes should not be resurrected. Or I don't know, I'm obviously joking, I'm not going to give away the list, but
I never even knew that was a thing. I think I saw the same reel, and I was like, wow, this was my generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you reminded me of something that I haven't thought about or felt in a long time, and it's that I remember when I was younger. I don't have a list, but I did. I think I think I remember like specifically thinking like, oh, I can't wait to get to Jannah or meet Allah or whatever happens next, because I really want to understand why is this like this, or why is this like that, or why is this person like that. I remember very distinctly thinking that, like, Jannah for me is like, I just want to understand, like, why is the world like this? I remember thinking that as I was younger. I guess
Exactly.
as I got older, I don't think about that as much. I think what I think about more often now as I'm older is like, I wish God could just put this person in my brain, right? So so I don't have to explain myself, right? So I don't have to struggle with words. I wish the God could just like put this person, or the other way around. Like, I wish I could understand why this person is like this. What are they thinking? What are they so afraid of? Or what are they so, bent on? That's what I kind of think about these days. But yeah, that's funny.
You need to purchase some women goggles and put them on. I think Ray-Ban will make soon a collab with AI or something, and they will maybe get closer to women intuition and reading psychology abilities, and there's just some goggles, and then you can wear them and look at the person, and you'll just get info, because that's how we have that's how we do.
That's so interesting because this also like just shows like this whole conversation and the list of I've seen reels about this because someone was like, I can't wait to get into Jannah so I can ask Allah what does Kaf Ha Ain Sad mean, what does Hamim mean, what does Alif Lam Mim mean,
Yeah.
and it's like there are people in the Sufi again. It's just when I see these and then I hear your questions, Mara, or anybody else's questions, my own questions, it's all like levels, like that's what it is, it's all levels of unveiling because there are people who know the meaning of these things. Like there are within Sufi circles, some people are taught the meaning of the huruf maqataat, I think they're called, those letters. There are people who see, like there are shuyukh who can see a person's like entire, I mean, my teacher told me this, trajectory. That's what he said. Like he'll look at you and he'll see your entire trajectory. And then that sheikh basically
Really?
gave a talk.
Can we talk to
Yeah.
him?
He's behind a hijab. He's very inaccessible. No,
I
I'm
wanna
just kidding.
get there.
But so that's the thing about the hijab as well. There's this quote that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I think that also, like, goes back to what Jawahar was saying about like the celebrity making an appearance, right? So it's like it implies that before they were not appearing, but it's like presence and closeness without vision. I think that's what hijab kind of is. So it's like God is present and closer than your habl al-warid, your jugular vein, but I don't have vision. He has vision of me, but I don't, like la tudrikhu al-absar, right? My vision is not going to reach him. But then it's like there are some people whose vision is reaching him more, and it's obvious. Again, there again, I disagree that some people are by like it's not unfair because nothing that God does is unfair, but we cannot deny that Musa alayhi salam's vision reached God more than anybody else's vision reached God. And Musa alayhi salam's sama reached God's kalam more than anybody's sama reached God's kalam. And Allah says, Ana akhtartuka, I have picked you, I have chosen you. Musa alayhi salam is like one of the chosen ones where in 3 different ways Allah tells him that he has been chosen. Ajtaba is also another word for chosenness. And then there are people that are chosen ones from whom the veils are lifted, whether there's a veils of hearing in the case of Musa alayhi salam, but also vision again in the case of Musa alayhi salam, and him being the chosen one. His name is the most frequently mentioned in the Quran, and he's loved by Allah more in a way that Allah says to him, وَأَلْقَيْتُ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِنِّي. I threw, or like I covered you in my love. Nobody else has told that. Literally nobody else has told that. Is that unfair? No, because Allah can choose who He wants. إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاهُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَزَادَهُ بَسْطَةً فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ وَاللَّهُ يُؤْتِي مُلْكَهُ مَن يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. When they said, like, the people were like, make us uh appoint a king for us so that we may fight in the way of Allah. And then they were told, their Nabi said to them, is it possible that when Allah appoints a king for you, then you're going to say, no, we're not going to fight? And they said, no, of course, how can we not fight when our sons were taken away from us and all of that? And then Allah said, okay, Talut is your king. And then they said, how can he be our king when he lam yu'ta sa'atan min al-mal? He's not abundant in wealth. And Allah said, or the Nabi said, sorry, that in Allah astafahu alaykum, Allah has chosen him over you. And زاده بسطة في العلم والجسم, and He has given him abundance of ilm and body. And إن الله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء. Allah gives His mulk to whoever He wishes. And so, what is that? Is that fair or unfair? Because those guys thought it was unfair, right? But we can never attribute unfairness to Allah. But we can still recognize that there is chosenness, there is specialness, there is fadl. Um, there is fadl, there is, astafakum, astafa, and then there's like ikhtar, right? Like, so it's like there's different types of chosenness, and based on that, like, people get different levels of access and different unveilings. So like there are people for whom it's like a joke if I were to tell them, oh, like, oh yeah, oh my god, I can't wait to get to Jannah, so I know what hamim means. They'll be like, okay, I mean, they're probably not going to say it to me, they will have too much lutf to say it to my face. But like, they'll just be like, yeah, this is like my everyday thing, I already been knew, because there are people who know. And it's like, oh, like, I want to know when Laylatul Qadr was, right, this whole time, or if it was like going in. Okay, there are people who knew that while they were alive, like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam knew at one point, right? And then he was made to forget, and I think forgetting is also kind of veil. But yeah, like, so it was there, and he did have access to that. So it's like, what the things that we want to know, they kind of also like reveal they unveil the levels of intimacy and or farness, like, that we have with Allah. Because for some people it's like super cash, because they're talking to Allah every day, and they're able to see beyond, like, they're able to look at people and see why things happen to them and what is going to happen to them. Like, a lot of some shuyukh, they would literally like predict their own death, and they would just pass away at that point. So like for us, it's not, yeah, like, I mean, it's not, what do you call it, like, conceivable, yeah. Whereas for some people it is.
Zinira, you remind me of the concept of tajalla, like when God basically reveal himself to us. Like, this is the entire meaning of the word tajalla, that he comes on, like, he reveal himself in phases.
Subhanallah, yeah. I think it's like tajalla, Allah tajalla to the jabal, right? And then it فَجَعَلَهُ دَكَّةً or sa'iqa, I think, sorry. فَصَارَ Musa sa'iqa. That's what the tajalli was on the mountain. Musa
Tajalla,
alayhi salam. Yeah,
it's like,
when Musa alayhi salam saw.
it's revealing, yeah. And then Musa was Kalim Allah alayhi salam, so he used to talk to Allah as well. So so I think the point here that we're curious about, or maybe Omar would like, why someone chosen over, this is something we don't know why. Like, why would God choose someone over the other? I think this is the hikmah that's hidden from us and that we don't know. I always wondered about it, like, okay, we know that there are people who are chosen for things, but does the decision happen before they get chosen? Like, is it based on something he knows that about the person, that he created the person? There's so much depth and curiosity around, like, why would God choose someone and not someone else? Is it a causality? Is it based on their performance? What is it? And that's
Oh,
something
so
we'll never
I
know.
can, yeah. So basically, Dr. Faraz was speaking about this, and he said, I mean, from the hadith, sorry, astaghfirullah, from the from Surah Al-Baqarah itself, Allah says, Allah yu'ti mulkahu man yasha. So like chosenness is like mulk. It is kingdom. Why is a certain person a king of a certain country? You know, they didn't do anything. They just are born into that family.
Mm.
And so and that includes like kings that are unjust, right? Like I think even within Surah Baqarah, Allah mentions when the king said to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ana uhyi wa umit.
Mm.
And he said Allah gave, that's the man that to whom Allah gave him the mulk. Did he do anything to be, good enough? No, it's just man yasha, Allah yu'ti mulkahu man yasha, and wasi'un alim, right? Those are the names that are manifested. So apparently Allah has an abundance of ilm about who, but also like Allah does whatever he wants. Like sometimes we forget this a lot of times. And in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah says they fought each other. But if Allah did not will, they would not have fought each other. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ. And that's just a reality. And so, but when it comes to specifically to chosenness, Dr. Faris said that it has to do with, so Ibn Arabi has this concept of ayn thabita, that every human being has a unique, like immutable essence. And so the immutable essence is kind of like, what we're trying to uncover really in this realm. We're trying to find what we are. Like you can think of it as like a unique manifestation of names that only one person has. So for example, so this is what I remember Dr. Faris saying about Musa alayhi salam's chosenness, is that he is chosen because he is Musa. If he was not chosen, he would not be Musa. So it's just something that he is. And again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has names of chosenness: Al-Mustafa, Al-Mujtaba, Al-Mukhtar. So he's chosen. And so it's like, did he do anything? No, it's like, so the ultimate chosenness, of course, is prophethood, right? It's prophecy. And it's like there's nothing they had to do. So chosenness cannot be earned. And chosenness cannot be like removed either. So there's nothing, whereas like other things can be earned, right? So wilaya, they say, can be earned or it can be chosen. Like for example, you and I, we can do things, like we can pray tahajjud, we can do things, inshallah, that can make us a wali. There's nothing you and I can do that can make us a prophet. And there's nothing any prophet can do that will stop him from being a prophet. Like there's nothing, no matter what he does, he's going to be a prophet. And so it's like, that's what chosenness is. It's really just Allah yu'ti mulkahu man yasha, like whoever Allah wills. It's really a matter of Allah's mashi'a.
I think what's interesting here, what's interesting here, that in the world we live in today, we're used to the opposite. We're used for people to perform and then for them to get chosen to do something. However, in this context, it's the other way around. They were chosen and then that thing tajalla, and then it manifest in the person, and then they became the kalim, and then they became the prophets. So there was the decision and then the manifestation. Whereas in our world, there's the manifestation, then the decision, maybe. That's why we struggle on our level of understanding as like the norm, like the average person. They won't understand this concept because it's the other way around in how this world is programmed today, right?
No, I totally get. I think that's what Omar was like kind of reflecting when he said there's no nepotism. There is nepotism because Allah picked who's going to be the king and who's going to be the prophet. They didn't do anything to earn it, and they don't need to do anything to earn it, and there's no one anything can do to earn it. And what is that? That's literally just mulk. That's a manifestation of Allah's name, mulk, because mulk is like, it's like the one who owns can do whatever he wants with what he owns, and he's not answerable to anybody. What is nepotism? Like nepotism only exists if like, you have certain standards of like fairness, right? You think, oh, you should have like, you should get forward, or like you should move according to something that you earn or some merit, right? But who said that? Like that's because you're assuming a certain criteria of fairness. But whatever God does in his creation is fair by default, because God is the fair. But also because there's no unfair. It cannot be unfair. But the issue is we don't know, right? Like we have our own criteria of fairness that we then project and then say, because it's it seems unfair, right? Like a lot of people are born into really, really luxury, like kings. Like if you think about, like kings, they're just chosen by God. Like Allah said that I just give my mulk to whomever I will, but they didn't do any. That's not, meritocracy, but it's still fair.
Yeah,
and we have to live with it.
But a lot of atheist people I've met, I think that specific line between the two things that made them become atheists. This belief of injustice, like why my mother got sick, why my country was destroyed, why this and that. Like this belief of like our belief that whatever God do is just and he has that absolute freedom to do whatever he wants. They don't perceive the world in that way. And that's the main distinction, I think, of becoming a believer, that you don't really need to understand the logic behind it.
Well, I mean, I think we have to be careful whenever we talk about why God does something. So, I don't know if I don't know if a lot of what we're saying here is really necessary. To clarify, I'm not denying that there are layers or hijabs or inaccessibility to God and truth and stuff like that. I'm not denying that at all. Or full stop, right? I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is that this only happens out of the mercy of Allah. That's what I'm saying, right? So, like, it's a simple thing about, like, for example, why God chooses the Prophet ﷺ, or why God chooses anybody for anything, right? You can frame that in two ways. You can frame that. You can have an attitude that's like, oh, Allah loves the Prophet ﷺ more than anybody else, for reasons that we don't know, and that's why he chose him, right? So you can frame it that way, and I think that's the better way to frame it. But you can also frame it as like, we're not good enough. We're all like, terrible Muslims will never reach the status of the Prophet ﷺ. We're not worthy, and so I think the English way that we talk about God and truth and knowledge and stuff like that, in terms of veils, when we talk about it in terms of like veils and things being hidden and secrets of the universe and stuff like that, I think when you talk that way, it's oh, well, Zanira left, so I think it has that negative connotation, right? That's all I'm trying to say. We can't know why God chooses some things, and we also shouldn't really try and fix time to that kind of thing, right? Like, I think you said something, Joahed, about like, it's the opposite of the real world, or how we act in the modern world, or in physical world. And I think at a surface level that is true, but I think it's also we don't know, right? Because like, Allah created everything, right? So like, he created the Prophet ﷺ in his way, in his own, in the way that he is, right? But at the same time, the Prophet also has his own will, right? So like, how we try and reconcile and balance between like our own will, or the will of human beings, or anybody's will, and the will of God, that's tricky, right? Like Allah says in the Quran, in very clear words, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ, right? So how do we even understand that, right? You don't even want anything unless Allah desires that you want it, right? So, trying to figure out like why God does certain things, or what happened to cause Allah to do certain things, I don't know if that's a fruitful endeavor. But all I'm saying is that regardless of why Allah does things, we have to maintain a positive image of it. It has to be out of the mercy of Allah, not out of like a kind of debasing others, right? It's not, of course everything Allah does is fair, right? But not everybody thinks that, right? And even Muslims who have a great faith in Allah, we don't always, even if we're not consciously saying, oh, Allah is humiliating me, or Allah is making my life different, even if we don't actually say that or think that, we might act that way, right? We might feel that way in a kind of way, and sometimes the language that we use is what leads to that sort of attitude and that sort of thinking. So that's the only thing that I think I can say there. is that whatever we can or cannot access in terms of truth and meaning and knowledge and Allah Himself, it's out of the mercy of Allah. Yeah. All right, khair, inshallah. I think that's it. Unless you have any thoughts. Hopefully, I didn't offend Zanira today.
I just have a question. I'm new to the group, and so does this meeting happen every Sunday?
It's kind of flexible right now because there's just a few like regular participants, like you saw, like Mara and Zanira and Maham. So we kind of just every week we just try and see whether Saturday works or Sunday works. And some weeks we might take a break. I think like the third Saturday of every month, I'm not available, so that day's off. But we can switch days, so it's a flexible schedule. You can find some more information in the group and on the app website here too.
Okay, and can you tell us more about, I saw ChatGPT, like how do we use that tool and the app? And
yeah, sure. I mean, I can kind of walk you through a little bit of it now. I mean, it's still in development, so there's a lot of stuff that's not in the best kind of way. You can actually, if you go to the main site, this is kind of like my professional profile. I have like my resume and stuff on there, but okay, the keyboard's not working. There you go. So if you go to projects, you can see you can have links to the projects most of the projects that I'm working on. So MindRoots is like the main thing that we've been using throughout the sessions to explore Arabic, and basically it's Lane's Lexicon. I'm not sure if you ever heard of that dictionary. It's like one of the biggest Arabic English dictionaries. So
what is it called?
It's called Lane's Lexicon.
Okay.
Yeah. So and there's a link in MindRoots to like other websites that have the same text, but in the MindRoots application, it's just designed in a way to be a little bit more accessible. So the GPT, I think that's what you're asking about. There's a link to that here. So if you use GPT, basically it's just like any regular GPT, except it has access to the app. So it can there's about 50,000 words in the database. So like any of the roots in the database. It can access to it. I also use it to create these like analyses, like or reports about a root. So basically, you can use the and maybe I'll share some links in the group as to how I do this. I have in the past, but basically, so it will analyze. I mean, I can show you this way actually. So So this graph that we were looking at today, this represents the root and all of the words that come from that root. So the GPT can basically, take all of that information and write like a short report on it. So it gives you kind of like the origin of the word, and it can help. You can actually do this yourself too if you want to look up a root in the dictionary. You can use the GPT to look up a root, get some information on it, and then you can actually write, using the GPT as an assistant to write a report like this onto the database. So you can see there's a bunch here. I think these are all me. I don't think anybody has used the tool yet. I've only had it out for a couple of weeks, but basically whenever I like do a search, well, whenever I try and study a root, I'll use the GPT to kind of give a basic report, and then, it'll give some like references. Sometimes it'll pull the poetry out of the dictionary, which is one of the main features for me. Is like I like to read poetry. And poetry is one of the easiest way to understand a root and words. So the GPT is able to pull out the references from the dictionary. So that's one of the cool things there. And I also like write some articles sometimes on like a root or a concept in a root. So I've been doing that as well. In terms of using the app, you can use it a lot of different ways. I need to create some like shorts and stuff to show people how to use it. But I have kind of done it a little bit in the through these sessions sometimes. What I use the most is the root search. So you can, search for any root. You can also search for partial roots. So like say you want to see all the roots that begin with ba, right? You can do that, or all the roots that that end in ba. You can do that too. Or all the roots that start with khal, for example, right? A lot of the words and a lot of the roots that start with khal have the meaning of preservation, as you might see. So you can do that, and then you can switch it to a table, graph table from that button there. It's a lot of different features. You can expand here, and then if you click on a word, you click on more info. You get the definition straight from Lane. Yeah, so that's the root search. The graph exploration is kind of like for language learners, but anybody can use it really. So like one thing I was thinking about doing was doing like a word of the day, and every time you push one of these buttons, you'll get a random word from the database. You can also do it with roots as well, and then you can expand it, and you can also expand words themselves, because sometimes a word is connected to the Quran or in the 99 names, and then you can get to it that way. So if you go to the library, you can see some of the text that I have. So I basically just have the 99 names, the Quran, and this one poem that I really like. So the library is also useful because you can read the Quran, and if you see a word that you want to know more about, you can click on the word, and it will give you the root. This is still in development, but that's one way that this app is designed to be used. And then the last section here is this Lisān Lab. It has some information on like what we do here, and the structure of the sessions. This probably needs to be revised. There's a report section too. So because the session started to get really long, what I did was I used a tool to transcribe them, and then I used an AI to summarize them. So you can find some of these reports here. I haven't done it yet because it costs. I haven't done it for all the sessions yet because it costs some money to do it. But yeah, that's something that I'm working on. I'm not sure if these links work that well. Yeah, I think it'll download a file. I have to fix that. Maybe I'll make a note for myself to fix that today. Yeah, and then the only other thing is the GPT. So I think that's what you were initially asking about. So like I said, yeah, it can just talk to. It's just a GPT that has direct access to a dictionary. So if you use GPT, if you ask it like what does this word mean, or tell me more about this word, it's very limited because it doesn't have direct access to primary sources. But with this custom GPT, and you can kind of see it here. With the custom GPT, it has direct access to the database, so it can get more precise information. It's definitely a work in progress. It's designed to just kind of take any words that you give it. So if I type peace here, for example, it should search the website for it should try and translate the word to Arabic, and then try and I'm just checking here what it's doing, because I've updated it a little bit and it's not performing as well as I would like it to. So I'm gonna have to update the instructions. But yeah, see here, it's not doing something great, but we can try and see what it'll do. Sometimes you just have to be specific to it. So like you have to tell it, search directly for the root, like that, and then inshallah I'll improve this. But then you can see here now the query that it's going to send actually has the letters in there, and then it will pull some more information. So yeah, that's the Minders GPT. The other one that I had is the Quran Roots GPT. So this is similar to the Minders GPT. It's still also talking to the app, but it's my vision is that it's designed to be a very, very powerful search tool for the Quran because it can search for roots. There's really no other search tool that exists that allows you to search the Quran by roots, except obviously, the website that we were looking at, Corpus Quran. But it's a little bit, you have to do it like through an interface. Obviously, you have to look for. Whereas with the Mind Roots, with the Quran Roots GPT, in theory anyway, it's still in development. It still could do it, but you might need to like coax it a little bit, or I have to improve the instructions. But you can ask it things like, where does the word love, where does the concept of love appear in the Quran? Where does it appear most in the Quran? And you can, and inshallah, as it improves, you can even do more advanced things like, where does how many times do we find, the pattern of fa'lan or fa'il or fa'il in the Quran? You can do stuff like that, and there's absolutely nothing right now that can do that at all. So
Wow.
that's the vision, inshallah. But yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, thank you so much. This sounds amazing. I mean, the other day I was passing, when I first entered the group, I was passing by the street and I saw the word qinwan. And I remember I read it in one of the ayahs, but I can't remember where. So I tried to use one of those tools to see where does the word qinwan get mentioned in the Quran, but
Mhm.
it did not work. I don't know. So I thought maybe I used it the wrong way.
What were you trying to use?
One of those tools, like I can't remember which GPT, one of the two, to to find the word qinwan and see where was it mentioned or what was the root.
Yeah, that's an interesting test case. I will write that down just so I can, because it's good to have these kind of cases to improve it.
And
But this
as
website is probably the best for that kind of thing. The trick is always, pretty much always at least, the trick is finding the root, right? So qinwan is a little tricky because there's a vowel there and it's not three consonants, so it's probably, I mean, we know it starts with a qaf, so then you can look at the list of roots here and see if there's like something that's qaf noon. So yeah, it's probably here, qaf noon waw. That will be my guess. Yep, there you go. So من النخل ومن النخل من طلعها قنوان دانية وجنات من أعناب. So this is in Surah Al-An'am, ayah 99.
so I need to feed the GPT with the root, not with the word.
Yeah, it should be able to. Yeah, that will always work better. But I'm trying to improve it, inshallah. When I have time, time is the trick with these kind of projects. It should be, you should be able to type anything really. You should be able to type a word in any language, and it should be able to find it. But it's just it's not. It just needs more development. Yeah, you can try it real quick. Actually, I'm curious, but let's see if we just. I can't type Arabic here, so. Did you use are you saying you tried this this GPT? Like you tried this or the Quran Root GPT?
Yeah, either the Quran or Mind Roots. Honestly, I can't remember, but maybe the Quran Roots.
Yeah.
And then I typed it in Arabic, qinwan. I just typed qinwan.
Yeah. I mean, it should be able to, but I can take a look here, see what it's gonna try and do. Yeah, this will probably fail.
Yeah, and then I put confirmed, and it kept asking me for permissions.
It asks you for permissions. I mean,
Like
you
pressed confirmed.
Yeah. You just have to, whatever you type to it, whenever it asks the website, whenever it talks to the website, it asks for your permission because it's sending data to an external party.
Yeah.
It worked here, so I guess it didn't work. It didn't work for you when you tried to find it. When you tried it.
Yeah, but I think it gave me the same, but nothing more. Like it doesn't mention the ayah
Oh
or
yeah. So it's because it's not designed that well yet that you have to kind of push it. So you can say like, can you give me the whole ayah? But I mean, yeah, there's so much room for improvement here. And you can turn this off too, actually. So you can turn off the question, the when it asks you to confirm. I forget how you do it. I think it's maybe it's in here. Yeah. So I don't think you can do it on the iPhone app. So if you're using an iPhone, I think you have to do it from the website first with your account. But you can go up here.
I used to,
Yeah. I mean, this is just for the privacy, but the confirmation thing. If you want to turn it off, you can just you can have. Oh, well, interesting. It's set to always allow, but it's still asking me. Yeah. Anyway, inshallah, I aim to improve this so that it's embedded into the app as well. But yeah, it should be able to do it. I'm guessing maybe you used MindRoots because the MindRoots GPT won't be able to search the Quran as well as the Quran Roots GPT. So maybe that's what happened. But yeah, I would love any feedback. I would really appreciate it if you use it and have any feedback. Please feel free. Also, you might be interested just looking at the acknowledgement section on the main page because there's a lot of really good information about where the information is coming from. And some other data, like if you're Arabic speaker, the Turat.io is the best search tool for Arabic texts. I have a little mention. This book right here is somebody mentioned it in the group a couple of months ago, I think now, and it's an amazing book. It's very much in the spirit of this project and what we do in these sessions. So basically, this woman, Lisa White, and she found this Egyptian artist. They collaborated on this book where they have all these words in Arabic that refer to the body, and then she talks about the etymology of them, and then she has the artist like draw these pictures that that kind of illustrate the range of meaning in the root. So it's a very wonderful book, and I highly recommend it. It's very much in the spirit, and it's good for both beginners and and Arabic speakers and native Arabic speakers, I think. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Wonderful woman as well, and Mahmoud as well is also a very nice guy. I've shared some of their stuff. Mahmoud has an Instagram with some of his art. Lisa is a little bit under the radar, but also I've been in contact with her, and she's been very supportive of my project, and she's a very nice woman as well. But yeah, if you have any more questions or any feedback or anything that you'd like to see, I see this as a service to the ummah, so like I'm not looking for money. I'm just looking to kind of do my best to make information and knowledge accessible to others. وإياك. Okay, Jazakallah khair for attending, Joad, and hope to see you soon, inshallah. And we can always continue the conversation in the chat room, inshallah.
Inshallah, shukran.
وإياك, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.